Chapter 1751 You can't have supper secretly behind my back. Meow, meow. Ugly Duckling sat in front of an empty shell as it called out to Mag, its eyes glimmering with hope. Ugly Duckling, you shouldn't eat something with such strong flavors. Your fur will start falling off. Mag pulled out some of the pincer meat from the grilled prawn, and placed it on the empty shell. Meow. Ugly Duckling lowered its head as it purred happily while eating. Ugly Duckling, you can't eat too much. If you get too heavy, it won't just stop at your fur falling out, Amy reminded it as she held a spicy crayfish pincer in her hand. Meow. Ugly Duckling turned its head in another direction, and continued eating, pretending to not hear anything. I'm so full. Amy put the last piece of prawn meat into her mouth, and pulled out a piece of tissue to wipe her hands and mouth. She rubbed her full belly satisfyingly. Little Amy's little tummy has loads of things in it, Mag said with a smile as he stroked her head. I didn't want to eat so much, but Father's cooking is way too good, so I couldn't control myself, Amy said helplessly with a pout. Are you still angry with me? Mag asked cautiously as he looked into Amy's eyes. Of course not. You are Amy's best father. How could Amy be angry at you? Amy reached out, and put her arms around Mag's neck before planting a kiss on his cheek. You are also Father's best baby. Mag smiled like a giant child. But you can't have supper secretly behind my back. You must call me along. Amy said seriously. Next time, the two of us will have supper secretly, Mag said with a doting smile. Hey, I'm still here. Irina crossed her arms in front of her chest, and looked at the father and daughter with a smile. Exactly. Amy leaned into Irina's embrace, and blinked at Mag. Of course we would call Mother along. We're going to have supper as a family of 3. Mag quickly realized that he seemed to have let it get to his head, and quickly said, Yes, we'll have supper as a family of 3. Can we go watch the stars? I haven't watched the stars with Father and Mother before. Amy looked at both of them expectantly. Of course. Mag looked at Amy apologetically. Because he had yet to announce his identity, they were unable to stand in public as a family of 3. Besides, he and Irina had been very busy recently, so they rarely had a chance to spend time together as a family. Let's go watch the stars. Irina waved her hand, and the pile of plates and rubbish all floated into the kitchen. The silverware went into the dishwasher, and the table was already spick and span. After that, she held Amy's little hand, and led her to the staircase. Mag picked Ugly Duckling up, and went up to take a thick blanket. The balcony on the 3rd floor was the best place to watch the stars. Mag swept the snow on the bench away, and laid the blanket on it. Amy sat in the middle, while Mag and Irina sat on her sides. Ugly Duckling leaped onto Amy's lap, and nestled there comfortably. The family of 3 covered themselves up with the blanket, leaned against the backrest of the bench, and looked up at the starry sky. But there are clouds, Amy said disappointedly. A dark cloud happened to drift across the sky above Chaos City, covering most of the view. One could only see a few stars here and there through the cloud. It was obviously not a good night for stargazing. It's all right. It's just a cloud. Irina took out her magic caster's staff, and pointed it to the sky. A golden light pierced the night sky, and disappeared into the dark cloud. With a thunderous roar, the thick black cloud floating over Chaos City disappeared rapidly to reveal the dark blue night sky and the twinkling stars. Wow! Mother is awesome! Amy was surprised at that sight. She put her arms around Irina's neck, and started kissing her as she pointed at the sky excitedly, and said, I've never seen such a clear and bright sky. Actually, Mag opened his mouth, but quickly swallowed his words. This really was not something anyone would be capable of. Even if he were to get back to the 10th tier, he couldn't possibly fly up to the sky and cut the cloud to pieces. However, when he saw the happy Amy and content Irina, the corners of his lips rose uncontrollably. The moon looks so small, and it will occasionally turn into a crescent, and then into a circle. Did Big Sister Babla really live on the moon in the past? Would she become a small person after returning to the moon? Amy asked curiously as she stared at the moon. The moon is very far away from us, so it looks small. It is actually very big, and the people living there are as big as us. Besides, the moon doesn't change in size. It only appears different because of how the light reflects on it, Mag said. Of course, the moon he was referring to was the moon seen on Earth. As of now, he did not know if that would apply to this world as well. Oh, Amy nodded thoughtfully. Then, she again curiously asked, then can Big Sister Babla go back home if she continues flying towards the moon? Those who did not give up flying to the moon should all be dead. Irina shook her head. In the skies, millions of kilometers above, is a layer that we could not break through. The moment you get past that layer, even a 10th tier powerhouse would not be able to breathe. That is why it's also called the layer of death. That's so scary. Amy's neck shrank. This is when you need a spaceship, Mag said to himself. How is Big Sister Babla going back home, then? Amy asked worriedly. She'll have to stay in the Norland continent unless the Moon Nation can repair and restart the teleportation portal. Irina shook her head. If the route to the Moon Nation could be built quickly, it would be a good thing. That would probably be the only place with well-preserved ancient characters and spell formations passed down. We currently have no lead on repairing the spell formation. Irina turned to look at Mag. There's not much hope. Mag looked up at the round moon. It did not feel secure to put all hopes on the moon hundreds and thousands of kilometers away. I'm so happy to be able to watch the stars with father and mother. It'll be great if we could do this often in the future, Amy said happily as he held their hands, not understanding what they just said. We will stargaze with Amy often in the future. Mag held Amy's hand gently, and looked at the mother and daughter pair lovingly. Your Majesty. The spell formation has already been repaired and enhanced. It's undergoing the last phase of trial and confirmation. Your Majesty, the elite advanced force has fallen in. The Moon Nation's best spell formation masters, magic casters, and warriors are all in position, awaiting your order to enter the teleportation portal. Your Majesty, please reconsider. The advanced force might face danger and ordeals. Your subject begs you not to put yourself in danger for the sake of the Moon Nation. The Moon Nation's warriors will definitely save Her Highness and bring her back. In the underground palace of the Moon Nation, several courtiers knelt to the ground and pleaded. I have already made up my mind. I must personally lead the advanced force into the teleportation portal. No matter what is on the other side of the teleportation portal, I must bring Babla back personally, the king said solemnly. I am the king of the Moon Nation, but also a father. Father. Chapter 1752. When everything is over, let's continue running our restaurant. Babla sighed dispiritedly, and relentlessly said, it's just a few characters on the runes. Can't we enhance the basics first? A spell formation is a whole. If you cannot completely interpret a spell formation, and then repair and enhance it as a whole, any changes made to it might cause the spell formation to collapse. Novan shook his head. This spell formation is way more complicated than most of the spell formations today. It's not something we could tweak easily. Chi, the great old one started laughing in a low tone, as though it was mocking their futile efforts. Don't be too smug. If my master was here, he could seal you back up any time. You wouldn't even have a say in it. Babla howled at the octopus monster with frustration. The racial meeting will be tomorrow. Michael has decided to let the representatives come over personally to take a look at the octopus monsters so that they would give up the thought of starting a war, and stand together against the devil that might break out of its seal in various parts of the Norland continent. Novan looked at the octopus monster within the seal, and solemnly said, this might be a war more brutal than the racial war. I do want to see how those fellows will react when they see this big fellow. It'll definitely be very interesting, Krasos said with a smile, and without much worry. If there's no progress tomorrow, I will be going back to give little Amy makeup lessons, Urian said calmly. Krasos turned back to look at Urian. He squinted, and said, You want to give Amy makeup classes secretly. Not only am I going to give her makeup classes, I'm going to leave her with homework. Little Amy's ice magic should be able to break through the 7th tier now, Urian said calmly. Wow, that's too much. We have the same disciple. To let Amy have a happy childhood, I've never given her any homework, but you actually gave her homework secretly. Krasos confronted. Zixi must have been doing a good job teaching the theory classes as a relief teacher, Urian continued to say calmly. You even found a relief teacher. Krasos stomped towards the entrance of the cave. Grandpa Krasos, where are you going so late at night? Babla asked. I'm going to give little Amy makeup classes. Krasos said without even turning back. According to little Amy's habits, she should already be sleeping. Don't tell me you're going to wake her up from her sleep to give her makeup classes. Babla asked with a smile. Don't blame me for being too much if you dare to disturb my disciple's sleep, Urian said coldly. Krasos paused in his steps. He hesitated for a while before walking back. I am not afraid of you. I just want little Amy to learn happily. However, an obedient disciple who is passionate about learning just like little Amy will definitely learn her fire magic well even if I don't give her homework. I don't want to learn. I just want to eat, and play, play all day. Besides, I can stargaze with father and mother. The holidays are fabulous. I love holidays, Amy mumbled in her sleep as she rested in Mag's and Irina's arms. Looks like our little scholar likes winter holidays without homework too, Mag said with a smile as he tucked Amy in. Irina looked at him with a smile, and softly said, When everything is over, let's continue running the restaurant. Mag looked at the gentleness reflecting in her deep blue eyes with a gentle smile, and said, Do you like being a lady boss? I think it's pretty good to be a lady boss who just collects money compared to an elven queen. Irina nodded her head seriously. I think it's pretty good to be a boss too. Mag nodded with a smile. Are you there? Josh stood by the window, and looked out to the northwestern side. His eyes were glowing with a devilish red. The shadow under the moonlight squirmed to slowly form a skull as it said in an enchanting voice, As long as you release it, you shall receive unlimited power. I will make a trip over when tomorrow's event is done. Josh nodded slightly. His smile slowly became skewed. I will become the most powerful person in the Norland continent. I want to destroy Alex and make Irina come back to me. As long as you get our help, even the giant dragons will have to bow down to you. After the heartwarming night, Mag got up from bed gently, and looked at the two who were sound asleep in bed. He tucked them in and tiptoed out. Today was supposed to be the restaurant's off day, but he had already promised City Lord Michael to use the restaurant as the venue for the racial meeting. Therefore, he still had to get up early to do the preparatory work. Usually, only the breakfast menu would be available in the morning. However, to satisfy the various representatives today, Mag decided to include everything except Buddha jumps over the wall into the menu, including hot pot and barbecue. After washing up, Mag stepped out of the bathroom in his chef's suit, and bumped into Gina, who suddenly appeared at the door. Gina stumbled, and subconsciously used her leg to hook onto Mag. Luckily, Mag reacted fast, and while he reached out to hold her shoulder, he tilted a little to the side to steer away from that long leg. Boss! Gina stabilized herself and rubbed her forehead, which knocked into Mag's chest. Her tender fair face flushed red. Boss looks so handsome every morning when he wakes up. Gina, why are you up so early? Mag asked with a smile as he let go of her. Gina came back to her senses, and quickly said, Boss, I have something to tell you. Is it regarding Lantist's representative team? Yes. Last night, the high priest sent the little fish to contact me. He will be leading the Lantist representative team personally to join the meeting. However, they did not receive an official invitation, so he didn't know what would be a suitable time for them to appear, Gina said with a nod. Have they already arrived at Chaos City? Yes. They arrived last night. However, the high priest said that they should not disturb your rest, so they did not come to meet you. Mag thought for a while, and said, tell them to wait near the restaurant. I will give them the notice to come in at an appropriate time. All right. Gina nodded before heading back to her room. Mag knew that the merfolks had a special way of transmitting information, so he did not really care too much. Ding! Just as Mag put on his apron, the doorbell rang. Who's here so early? Mag went to the door. Ferris and Camilla would not be coming today, and the rest would not usually come over so early. Chapter 1753 Me indeed. I should be a little taller compared to yesterday, but that's not the point. What other changes are there? Yabimiya continued to probe. Mag actually could already sense the strong giant dragon aura coming from Yabimiya, which was similar to one of the two giant dragons who came yesterday for hot pot. His gaze landed on the golden necklace in front of her chest. The pendant part of the necklace was a golden dragon scale. The aura came from there. You became a little prettier, Mag said with a smile. Really? Yabimiya's face reddened. An honest and upright man like Mag would only say the truth. He definitely would not lie. However, she very quickly remembered that she was not asking Mag to acknowledge her looks. She quickly grabbed the necklace in front of her chest, and excitedly said, I got myself a master yesterday. A very formidable master. Master. Mag was a little shocked. He knew that golden dragons wanted to bring Yabimiya back to Dragon Island, but did not expect the golden dragon tribe's chief to personally make Mia his disciple. Yes. My master said that he's the chief of the golden dragon tribe, and promised to give me 10 years to stay in Chaos City as a server, Yabimiya said with a nod. Congratulations, Mia. You've found a place you belong. Mia looked at Yabimiya with a smile. Thank you. Yabimiya smiled. Her pigtails made her look energetic every day, but her eyes were moist. She suddenly pounced into Mag's embrace as she choked up, and said, Thank you, boss. You deserve all this. Mag lowered his head, and could see the back of her head at his chest. He smiled and patted her back. This young half-dragon had once fainted at his restaurant door from hunger. She had finally found a place she could belong to, and Mag sincerely felt happy for her. After a while, Mia let go of Mag and took 2 steps back. Her face flushed red, and she did not dare to look at Mag in the eye. She looked down, and embarrassedly said, I think I got a little too agitated, it's all right. No one saw it anyway. Mag closed the restaurant door with a smile while heading to the kitchen, and said, I need to host around 100 guests this morning at the same time. Other than Buddha jumps over the wall, we will be opening all food in our menu for them to order, so we have to finish all our preparatory work before 8. That's a lot of people. Mia was a veteran staff member in the restaurant, and clearly knew how much work they had to do. She quickly caught up with Mag, and said, Do you need me to do anything? Bring a stool over, and sit at the door to watch, Mag said with a smile as he took fathead fish out from the knife rack. Please begin your performance. Mia brought a stool over to the kitchen door, and motioned for Mag to begin. Fathead fish moved like lightning, and all the ingredients flew around in the air, but landed neatly on different plates. Wow, my boss has such incredible knife skills. Yabimiya gave a standing ovation in shock. That's just normal operations. Mag smiled. This is why you need an audience. The ingredients were prepared very quickly. Mag started cooking some of the dishes which required cooking in advance, like the red braised pork, congee with pork and century egg, tofu pudding, and more. What would you like to have? Mag asked Mia, who was sitting at the door with a face full of admiration, as he finished his preparatory work. Mia thought for a while, and replied, tofu pudding and yushao. All right. I'll make some for you when Amy and the rest are up, Mag said with a smile and a nod. All right. Mia nodded, and placed the stool back where it was. Your master might be joining today's meeting too. Really? Mia's eyes lit up. She did not have much time to interact with her master yesterday, so it would be great if she could still see him today. Amy woke up not long later. Everyone had breakfast, while Irina sat at the side with a cup of warm water. As the representative of the Night Elves, she would be dining with the other representatives later. Big sister Irina, are you really not eating? Amy dipped the yushao in her hand, and fed it to Irina. I'll eat a while later. Irina took a sip of water. This is a good idea. Otherwise, you would feel terrible just sitting there when everyone's eating, Mag said with a smile. Michael obviously used Mamie restaurant as an icebreaker to put all the representatives, each harboring their own intentions, at a table together while distracting them a little. I can have a bowl of tofu pudding first, Irina said as she crossed her arms in front of her chest elegantly. Give me a moment. Mag walked into the kitchen, and brought out a bowl of sweet tofu pudding with him. The itinerary for the first day is actually Mamie restaurant. This city lord knows how it should be done. Connie walked out of the city lord's castle with the schedule in her hand as she mumbled to herself in surprise. I wonder if Boss Mag would have the Buddha jumps over the wall ready in the morning. A familiar voice came from beside Connie. Master. Connie turned around to see Rex leaning against the wall at the side. She said in shock and surprise, what are you doing here? As the deputy warden of Basti prison, and also the only survivor who witnessed what happened at the Urba tribe, I was also invited by Michael. Rex pulled out an invitation, and waved it in the air. Why didn't you come with me in that case? Connie asked. To train you. How's it? I told you I can come to Chaos City alone, Chaos City said smugly. Yes. It's just a pity about those fellows who were waiting for you on the way. They waited in vain for the entire day, and had to be punished when they were back. Rex had a sympathetic look on his face. Someone wanted to stop me. Connie blinked. Smiling, she quickly said, actually, I've already predicted that, so I purposely went around them. This is the awareness of a leader. Me indeed. Only you are capable of something like this. Rex rolled his eyes. He did not know how he should comment on his disciple. Let's go. Master, let's have breakfast at the restaurant. Connie pulled Rex's sleeve with a smile as they walked towards a horse-drawn carriage at the side. The city lord's castle had already prepared horse-drawn carriages for the various representatives. Chapter 1754 The Invincible, Beautiful Young Lady. The various representatives alighted from the horse-drawn carriages, and were rather puzzled when they saw the tightly shut restaurant door. What's going on? City Lord Michael told us to come here, but we're not allowed to go in. Oster said unhappily as he alighted from his horse-drawn carriage. Dykus walked over with a smile, and explained, my apologies, Chief Oster. There are 5 minutes left to the set time to enter the restaurant. Besides, the other representatives are still on their way here. Please wait for a moment. Boss Mag is someone who follows the rules, and is a very punctual person, unlike someone else, Connie said as she jumped off from her horse-drawn carriage. You. Oster swept her a deathly cold glance. I, the invincible, beautiful young lady. Connie said fearlessly as she inched towards Rex. The orcs around Oster stepped over, and some had already pulled out their weapons. Suddenly, the atmosphere grew tense. Forget it. Oster raised his hand to stop the orcs. He glanced at Connie coldly, and said, although I am rather shocked to see you at Chaos City, this meeting is very important to the interests of all the orcs. I hope you can make the correct decision. In that case, you should give up the thought of starting a war as soon as possible. The orcs do not need war, and would not obtain any interests that they want from war. The only interest in war is your own interest, Connie mocked. Very well. I hope you can still say that the next time I meet you. Oster laughed angrily. Are you a fool? You need me to repeat the same thing to you. Connie looked at him as though he was a fool. Humph. Oster snorted, and walked in another direction. Don't be afraid, I'm here. Rex patted Connie's stiff shoulder. Whew, Connie let out a sigh of relief. She moved her body that was stiff from the nerves. This was the big bad boss that she had only dared to peek at in the past. Now, she actually mocked him in his face, and she could not help but feel a little proud as she asked, Master, wasn't I impressive? It's all right. Rex nodded perfunctorily. I am somebody now. I'd better watch my image. After all, we orcs are the representative of loyalty. We can't be despised. Connie adjusted her clothes, and put her arms behind her back as she looked left and right like an experienced leader. She saw many legendary characters from the various tribes, and could not help but be in awe silently. 2 horse-drawn carriages pulled up at the restaurant's door. Josh alighted from the horse-drawn carriage, and looked at the tightly shut door, as well as the various representatives standing in front of the door, and frowned. He thought unhappily to himself, could Chaos City be trying to show us who's boss? Wow! City Lord Michael is really sincere. He actually reserved the entire Mamie restaurant. Today is the restaurant's off day. I wonder how much the City Lord paid, Vanessa exclaimed in shock the moment she alighted from the horse-drawn carriage. Vanessa was excited. She kept making sure with Dykus, asking, would Mamie restaurant be providing all 3 meals today? Is Boss Mag making them personally? He's not just providing the venue, right? Yes. As host for today's meeting, Mamie restaurant would be providing the venue and all 3 meals, Dykus said with a smile. That's great. Vanessa jumped for joy. However, she could quickly feel the gazes on her, and restrained herself. After all, she was currently representing the Roth Empire. While she was happy, she would still have to watch her behavior. Is this the restaurant that you have been going on about? Josh asked with a smile. Yes, yes. Besides, Big Brother Josh, you know the owner of this restaurant. It's that chef whom you recommended for Royal Father's birthday banquet, the one who was named the best chef, Vanessa said with a nod. So it's him. Josh fell deep in thought, and quickly remembered Mag. He did make very impressive dishes. Yes. Boss Mag's food is really good. Red braised pork, beef kebab, spicy grilled fish, durian pizza, tofu pudding, spicy crayfish, Peking duck, Vanessa listed, making the people who were listening nearby swallow their saliva, and reducing their unhappiness for being locked outside. Andre really doesn't give a sh*t about the other races, seeing how he sent 2 kids over, Oster interrupted Vanessa coldly. Josh instinctively pulled Vanessa behind him. He looked at Oster with a smile, and said, Royal Father is busy with the country's affairs, and could not make time to attend this meeting. Therefore, he sent me and Princess Vanessa, together with President Richard, over to join the meeting, which shows how much importance the Roth Empire has placed on this meeting. I wonder what made Chief Oster say what you said. Richard and 2 other 10th-tier powerhouses took a step forward to protect Josh and Vanessa on both sides. They already had their hands on their weapons, including Magic Caster's staff and longsword. The Roth Empire and the Twilight Forest were next to each other. There had been a war going on for years, and they did not have an amicable relationship. Meanwhile, for the Orcs, the Og tribe was the one who incited the conflicts between the other tribes and the Roth Empire. The grudges between both sides went way back, and no one was willing to back down. The atmosphere tensed up instantly. Dykus watched as his head began to ache. Mamie restaurant was chosen precisely to prevent this type of conflict from happening. However, he did not expect it to happen before they even entered the restaurant. This was not something he could handle. Why, the door's not open yet. It seems like everyone's a little early. Just then, there came a bright vice. Michael came over on his black horse. He got off the horse, and stood right between the Orcs and the Roth Empire's representatives. He looked at Oster with a smile, and said, "Chief Oster, long time no see." "Michael, long time no see." Oster restrained himself a little, and raised his hand to signal the Orcs to back down. "Prince Josh, Princess Vanessa, and President Richard, hello." Michael turned and greeted the representatives from the Roth Empire. "Hello, sir." Vanessa lifted her skirt and curtsied, full marks for manners. "Sir, my royal father asked me to send his greetings on his behalf to you," Josh said with a nod. "Hello, sir." Richard nodded calmly. The tense atmosphere between both parties eased, and both sides separated on account of the host. "The representatives of the Elves are here." Just then, 3 horse-drawn carriages pulled up along the street. The one leading was a lavish blue crystal horse-drawn carriage. A handsome elf was guiding 4 pure white Pegasuses as they pulled the horse-drawn carriages over. "Princess Irina is here too." Very quickly, someone noticed the purple-striped griffin flying in the sky, and standing on the back of the griffin was a white silhouette. Chapter 1755. Do you think that you can defeat Ozai, or that you can defeat me? Her appearance here today showed that Chaos City had accepted the Night Elves, and she had also received an invitation. Most of the people knew that famous purple-striped griffin. It was that man's ride. Everyone had heard that the Wind Forest had sent their new elven princess to join this meeting. Many people started to look forward to the meeting to see the new and old elven princesses meet, wanting to see the Wind Forest and Night Elves pit themselves against each other. "Irina." Josh looked up at Irina, and suddenly felt a surge of anger. However, his gaze turned a little colder the moment he saw that purple-striped griffin. Although he did not see Alex, the purple-striped griffin was sufficient to represent his stand. No one could overlook that. The crystal horse-drawn carriage pulled up in front of the restaurant. The door opened, and Sally, dressed in a lavish blue gown, walked out slowly. She glanced at the restaurant, and her eyes lit up. However, she quickly restrained herself. "Is this the current elven princess? She seems a far cry from Irina in terms of power. With her power at her age, she's already considered a talent. It's just that Irina is too outstanding. No one can be compared to her other than Alex. I wonder if Irina would make things difficult for the new princess. The Elves team isn't really her opponent." The other representatives chatted softly. A few elves quickly jumped out of the horse-drawn carriages behind. They appeared rather nervous as they went up to protect the crystal horse-drawn carriage, and looked up at the sky. "Chaos City is really bold. They actually invited the Night Elves," Elliot said gloomily. The purple-striped griffin descended slowly under everyone's scrutiny, and finally stopped at around a meter above the ground. The horses and rides around quickly backed off nervously. Everyone's attention went to Irina, who was on the griffin. In the past century, Irina, who had displayed astounding talent since she was young, and Alex, who appeared out of nowhere, were undeniably the brightest stars in the sky. The scariest part was that these two legends actually fell in love with each other despite their racial differences. Although Alex had since disappeared after being seriously injured in that ambush on a rainy night 3 years ago, Irina had also been silent for 3 years. But just when everyone was about to forget them, they emerged even stronger than before to make the world shiver in front of them. Irina glanced at Sally, who was standing on the crystal horse-drawn carriage, and took a step forward as she landed gently on the ground. Seeing that the Elves team had been overshadowed, Elliot coldly said, "The Night Elves are so shabby. Only one person came to join the meeting." Irina glanced at Elliot, and mocked, "Do you think that you can defeat Ozai, or that you can defeat me." Elliot was stumped. He glanced at the purple-striped griffin, which was staring at him, and then looked at Irina, and stuttered, I shall not stoop to your level. It seems like the Tree of Life has already accepted you," Irina said. "Yes." Sally nodded slightly. He looked at Irina gratefully, and knew very well why the Tree of Life would accept her. Irina did not speak further. She waved her hand. Ozzy glanced at the restaurant, and disappeared without a trace with a flash of purple lightning. "Where's Alex?" Everyone was curious when they saw the purple lightning disappear on the horizon. It was said that Alex had been appearing in Chaos City frequently. Why did he not come with Irina? "Big sister Irina." Vanessa waved her hand at Irina as she greeted her happily. Irina glanced at her, and nodded slightly. Josh, who was standing at the side, tidied himself up and smiled gently. He looked at Irina, and said, "Long time no." Before he could even finish his words, Irina looked away, as though she had never seen him. Josh's smile froze, and he retracted his hand, which was reached out, awkwardly. Vanessa looked at Josh curiously. From what she remembered, big brother Josh and big sister Irina had quite a good relationship. Why did she ignore him? Is the door not opened yet? Just then, a golden ray descended from the sky. Louis and Jinx walked out. They were shocked that the restaurant door was still closed. "What's wrong with waiting a little?" A silver ray appeared, and Douglas walked out. "Tyranno dragons never wait for anyone." An annoyed voice came from nowhere. A black dragon that was hundreds of meters long descended. When he landed, he turned into a middle-aged man in black armor. Golden Dragon Louis, Frost Dragon Douglas, Tyranno Dragon Franklin. The giant dragons actually sent the three big ones. The various representatives looked at the last three to arrive, and were all unable to conceal their shock. Just then, the tightly shut restaurant door slowly opened. Mag stood by the restaurant door with a smile, and said, "Welcome to Mamie Restaurant. It's exactly 8. Not a minute late." "Boss Mag is indeed a punctual man," Vanessa exclaimed as she looked at her watch. "Boss Mag, if you hadn't opened the door by now, I wouldn't have been able to stop them from tearing the shop down," Michael said as he stepped forward. "Punctuality is part of my professional ethics," Mag said with a smile as he turned to the side to allow everyone in. "Welcome in, representatives, and please be seated according to your names," Michael said as he stepped up and entered the restaurant first. The various representatives who had been waiting at the door walked in. Many of them could not help but size Mag up. An ordinary-looking human like that actually made them wait so long outside? How dared he? "Boss Mag, I'm here again." Vanessa walked to the door and winked at Mag. Mag nodded with a smile. He had long known Vanessa's identity, so he did not appear too shocked. "Mr. Mag, long time no see," Josh stopped and greeted Mr. Mag with a smile. "Second Prince, long time no see," Mag said calmly with a slight nod. As there were other representatives waiting to enter, Josh did not speak further, and entered with Vanessa. "Ahem, I'm here." Connie put her hands behind her back and sauntered in, clearing her throat on purpose to make her existence known. "Him." Mag acknowledged softly. He nodded at Rex, and quickly saw Sally, who was walking over, protected by many elves. Sally looked up, and happened to look towards the entrance of the restaurant. Perhaps Mamie Restaurant was a special place that could gather all these unique people. Of course, he would not admit that he was a princess collector. Other than work, they were his friends. He was very happy to be able to see Sally again at Mamie Restaurant. This was also her first time returning to Mamie Restaurant. However, this time, she was no longer using the identity of the noble elven lady, Aisha, but the new elven princess, Sally. Mag felt a little awkward as the previous princess was his wife. Yabimiya had also spotted Sally in the crowd. Her eyes lit up, and she wanted to greet Sally. Amy came out from nowhere with Ugly Duckling in her arms. She looked up, and curiously asked Mia, Amy is here, big sister Mia, is anything the matter? Amy. Mia lowered her head, and made eyes at Amy. She suddenly recalled what Mag had instructed during breakfast, and quickly swallowed her words. She shook her head slightly, and said, Nothing, I just wanted to make sure I know where you are. I didn't run about. I am very obedient. Amy smiled. She carried Ugly Duckling, and sat on a stool at the side before greeting the various representatives warmly. Welcome to Mamie Restaurant. The food and drinks are good. Have a good meal, but remember to pay. The various representatives could not help but glance a few more times at Amy. This half-elf was really cute. The way she rambled on even made the trolls fond of her. Aisha is really beautiful today. But has she already become the elven princess? That's impressive. Mia glanced at Sally secretly. The latter appeared nonchalant, and it seemed like she did not recognize her anymore. Mia could not help but feel a little down. Humph, a mixed breed between an elf and a human. What a disgrace to the elves, Elliot mocked after glancing at Amy. Mag and Irina looked at Elliot at the same time with danger glowing in their eyes. Sally glanced at Elliot, and coldly said, She's the disciple of Krasua and Urian. I hope you can repeat what you said loudly in front of them. Elliot's mouth dropped open. He thought of those two unreasonable old men, and shrank back instinctively. He looked at Amy again with more wariness in his eyes. Forget it. I shall spare your meager life today. Irina threw back the foldable chair she had already pulled out on account of the elves. Of course, not on account of Sally. Mag turned away as well. Right now, he was just an ordinary chef. Killing a 10th tier elf was not part of his characterization. If he were to break his facade, it would not be easy to build it up again. Sally walked to the door, and nodded inconspicuously at Mia. When she walked past Mia, she suddenly winked at her. Mia's eyes lit up. However, Sally had already walked past her expressionlessly. Her nonchalant look seemed not to have carried that cheeky expression before. Sally still recognized me. But it seems like she can't show that we know each other, Mia thought to herself happily as she tried to maintain a professional look. Immediately after that, Camilla, who was dressed in a bright red gown, and Dracula, who was dressed in a black tuxedo, walked in and nodded slightly at Mag and the rest before moving off to their seats. My disciple, your master has come to visit you, Louis said merrily with a smile as he walked to Mia. Disciple. Many of the representatives had already turned around to look. Their gazes landed on Mia, who was dressed in a maid's uniform, and Louis, who was standing before her. They were all shocked. F***ck. Louis, when did you get a disciple? Franklin sized Yabimia up as he stared with wide eyes in disbelief. Yesterday, Louis said proudly. Franklin stared at Mia for a while before suspiciously asking, Don't tell me she's your illegitimate daughter. Great minds think alike. Jinx, who was standing at the back, gave a thumbs up silently. Scram. Louis did not explain further, and walked into the restaurant. The other representatives were all deep in thought. The meeting had yet to start, and there was already so much drama. This restaurant wasn't simple at all. The owner's daughter was Krasua and Urian's disciple, and the server was actually the Golden Dragon Chief's disciple. After that, they all glanced at the other service staff and were shocked. Other than the little demon with a horn on her head and that human server who looked rather ordinary, that young succubus was actually an 8th tier. An 8th tier succubus was even rarer than a 10th tier magic caster. It was a rare sight even on the Norland continent. Meanwhile, the young lady of an unknown race also had reached the 8th tier, and she seemed only around 17 to 18 years old. That would be a shocking talent in the whole Norland continent, but they were actually working as service staff here? Who exactly is the owner of this restaurant? The various representatives were rather shocked, and they could not help but look at Mag differently. Mag could feel all the gazes upon him, but he merely smiled. They had no idea that the new elven princess sitting there had also once worked in Mamie restaurant, being in charge of cleaning, and the chief of the Falk tribe was a delivery person, while the graceful Countess Bartoli who was swirling the red wine was in charge of cutting up the ingredients. Princess Elizabeth of the Frost Dragon tribe was also not present because of personal reasons. If they knew, they would go bonkers. An ordinary man. The chief of the dwarves gave his comment. Many representatives nodded in agreement. They could not see anything special in Mag today. Mamie restaurant will be in charge of everyone's meals. Everyone, you will have a menu by your side, and you can start ordering your food, Mag announced with a smile. Mag had reshuffled the layout of the restaurant before everyone entered. He made a large round table by putting many tables together to avoid any conflicts that might arise due to the seating arrangement. The seating arrangement for the various representatives was also set by the city lord's castle staff so that the races with conflicts would be separated, but they would not be so far apart that communication would be affected. Chapter 1757 We want the insanely spicy too. The Roth Empire sent Josh and Richard. Did that mean that Andre was leaning towards Josh being the crown prince? That was worth a thought. As for Vanessa, she should be here purely for the food. The Orcs were split into two main camps, mainly the Falk tribe that was for peace, and the Og tribe, which was for war. Oster personally led 3 10th-tier powerhouses, and had an obviously more imposing presence than Connie and Rex. Of course, if Rex were to shave his head, he might be able to match up. The demons sent the highest number of representatives. Out of the 10 demon tribes, 5 sent their representatives. The flaming demons and abyss demons were separated by the 3 representatives from the dragon tribes. After taking their seats, their anger had gone down significantly. The fear demon representative sized Irina up. Ever since Bashir's death, the fear demon's reputation had been badly affected, but since it was Irina and Alex who did it, the fear demons could only suck it up. Camilla and Dracula had brought their own red wine, and were already sipping on it leisurely. What Mag paid extra attention to was the Shivara, Weston, sitting to the left of Camilla. In that assassination on that rainy night 3 years ago, most of the assassins died there and then. Weston was the one who said he would kill both Mag and Amy. Mag had a vivid impression of this fellow. Since you're here, don't think of going back. Mag's gaze turned cold. He did not see Weston on the trip to the Boundless Sea previously, but this time, Weston came knocking right at his door. The goblins and elves were separated by the forest trolls. As the 2 races were beside each other geographically, there were a lot of conflicts between them. Recently, because the goblins opened up their underground cavern at the borders for the night elves, allowing them to retreat into the goblin territory, their relationship was further strained. The dwarves from Eason Castle seemed harmless, and were concentrating on the menu. As they were a race with technical skills, their relationship with the various races was not bad. They were considered the only other neutral party besides Chaos City. This was also a very special experience for the various representatives. It was not rare for the host to provide the meals, but they had never had a meeting in a restaurant before. According to the owner of this restaurant, the first day of their meeting would be at this impromptu put-together round table where they would also be having their 3 meals. Is Chaos City lacking in funding? Isn't this setup a little too shabby? Many representatives looked at Michael. Michael picked up the menu with a smile. Chaos City really was not lacking money. Besides, if the city lord's castle wanted a venue, they could actually save up on tens of thousands of copper coins on just the venue reservation. Do you think Boss Mag is very cheap? No, he's extraordinarily expensive. Boss Mag, do you still only provide limited variety for breakfast? Vanessa asked Mag. Limited variety. Everyone was bewildered. We can't have hot pot for breakfast. Louis asked anxiously. You can order anything on the menu. The restaurant will provide an hour for everyone's meal, Mag explained. Hot pot too. Vanessa's eyes lit up. She was delighted when she saw the hot pot section at the back of the menu. Yes, hot pot too. Mag nodded with a smile. In that case, I want to have a hot pot, with the insanely spicy soup base and a set of beef, 2 sets of duck intestines, 2 sets of tripe, a set of mala spicy beef, a set of... Vanessa started ordering. She had been missing the food so much that she even dreamt of eating hot pot. She could no longer care about eating light in the morning. I want the hot pot too, Louis said with a raise of his hand. Master, you want hot pot too? Yabimiya confirmed with Louis. Yesterday, her master seemed to have a hard time with the hot pot. She didn't expect him to order hot pot today. Actually, it's he who wants it. Louis pointed at Jinx, and helplessly said, I am just eating it with him to fulfill the youngster's wishes. Jinx gaped. He saw Louis's dangerous glare, and nodded begrudgingly, yes, I want to eat it, we want a double pot, and 4 servings of everything. That's it. Louis nodded with satisfaction. What flavor would you like your soup base to be? Yabimiya asked. Louis and Jinx exchanged glances. Yesterday's medium spicy had already got them a little off their seat. Initially, they wanted to order a mild spicy, but the young lady sitting opposite them asked for an insanely spicy straight away, and that bruised their ego a little. We want the insanely spicy too. Louis declared. Jinx's eyelid twitched. He felt that this was not the right choice. All right. Yabimiya nodded her head slightly, and took down their order. The Princess of the Roth Empire and the Golden Dragon tribe both chose hot pot. Could hot pot be the signature of the restaurant? Those undecided customers quickly flipped to the hot pot section. When you could not decide what to get, following others would never go wrong. I want a set of insanely spicy hot pot too, Oster said. Real men went for the insanely spicy. An insanely spicy hot pot here too. The trolls will be getting 3 sets. Insanely spicy too. Everyone quickly ordered, and hot pot became the hot selling item for breakfast. As everyone was trying not to lose to the others, they all ordered insanely spicy. Mag frowned a little. He did not expect everyone to love hot pot so much. Thankfully, he had already prepared the soup base, so all he had to do was to make it insanely spicy. However, the meeting might not go too harmoniously with the insanely spicy for breakfast to kickstart the day. Shall we also get a set of insanely spicy hot pot? Dracula was about to raise his hand. If you don't want to suffer in the toilet for the following days, I would advise you not to order that, Camilla said calmly. After that, she turned to Mia, who was beside her, with a smile, and said, I want a set of medium rare steak and a set of savory tofu pudding. Same. Dracula followed along. All right. Please hold on for a moment. Mia nodded with a smile. The last to order were the elves. 3 sets of hot pot, insanely spicy. Elliot was already starting to order. The elves should never lose to the other races. I am not having hot pot, Sally interrupted Elliot. She looked at Mia, and said, I'll have a sweet tofu pudding and a set of Yangzhou fried rice. All right, please hold on for a moment. Yabimiya walked to the kitchen with a smile. Rena, you'll be in charge of the soup base. Leave the cutting to me, Mag instructed as he got ready the ingredients for hot pot. Chapter 1758. 10 times the insanely spicy, 10 times the happiness. Hold on, let me check the taste. Rena quickly finished making the soup base, but Mag stopped Mia and Gina, who were about to serve the dishes. The tens of insanely soup pots were giving out a spine-chilling, tear-jerking, stinging smell. Is it really okay to have this early in the morning? Mia asked worriedly. Usually, people would rarely order the insanely spicy soup pot because even normal people could not stand this level of spiciness. They'll have to be okay even if they're not okay. The various representatives are of at least 9th tier. If they can't even handle a food a young lady could, that would be really embarrassing, Mag said with a smile as he added more insanely spicy chili packets into the soup pots. Are we adding more chili? Rena was a little shocked. She had made the soup base strictly according to the ratio for insanely spicy, but Mag was adding even more spice to eat in folds. Yes. We have to add more spice to it according to certain customers' characteristics so that it would fit their taste buds. Mag nodded with a smile. He kept the chili, pointed at the first 10 soup pots, and told Mia, these are for the Roth Empire, Shivara, Og tribe, and Elven representatives. All right. Mia nodded and brought the soup pots out of the kitchen. What a stinging smell! The various representatives, who fell into an awkward silence after ordering their food, quickly smelled the stinging spice, and all looked at Yabimiya. Achoo! The goblins, which were seated close to the kitchen door, sneezed thrice in a row. They looked at the solo mini hot pot placed in front of them with bewilderment. Red chili covered almost the entire surface of the pot, and the stinging smell came right from the pot. Tears already started glistening in their eyes and rolling down their cheeks uncontrollably. This is spicy? That's insane! The two goblin representatives turned a little to wipe away their tears, but their tears still fell uncontrollably due to the spiciness. As the spicy smell diffused out, the various representatives started to fidget around. This spiciness was obviously beyond their expectations. The smell alone made their throat dry and itchy. Tisk, tisk. What an extreme taste they have. Connie, who ordered soybean milk and yashao with kebabs, clicked her tongue. She did not dare to even try the insanely spicy, but these people were all fighting to order that. What a pity there's no Buddha jumps over the wall, Rex said with a pity. He ordered a set of fried rice and a bowl of soybean milk. Dracula gloated happily when he saw those people with a grave expression, and smilingly told Camilla, seems like you're pretty familiar with this restaurant. I would come here to eat occasionally, Camilla said calmly with a sip of red wine. The insanely spicy hot pot was served one by one. Each person had a mini pot, and the soup was already boiling when it was served. The strong and stinging spicy smell started wafting around with the steam. It was as though one had stepped into an insanely spicy sauna. It was an indescribable feeling of rejuvenation. This hot pot doesn't seem like what it's supposed to be. Elliot was a little flustered too. Although he was a man who could handle 3 times the spiciness of the insanely spicy hot pot, the pure smell of this already made his face and eyes flush red. He wanted to leave this hot pot as far as possible. We're done for. Louis and Jinx exchanged gazes, and saw the hopelessness in each other's eyes. Come to mention it, they were the ones who brought the various representatives into this deep hole of insanely spicy. If they had not ordered the insanely spicy as well, the others would not have followed suit. We ordered the insanely spicy, so we got to eat it, Jinx muttered softly. Do I need you to remind me of that? Louis rolled his eyes, and resolutely said, it's just a little more spice. This is the smell. Perfect. Vanessa inched towards the pot, and took a deep whiff. She had been longing for this hot pot, and could finally have it. Is this soup? Josh looked at the insanely spicy soup pot with his brows tightly knitted. As someone who had once undergone the torture of the insanely spicy grilled fish, he knew what that tasted like. The torment in the toilet was an indescribable pain. It was the soft moan in the darkness of the night. But right now, he represented the Roth Empire, and he had to display his courage. It was the dignity of the Roth Empire at stake. It's just a pot of soup. I'll go first. Cheers. Oster scooped up a bowl of soup, and finished it in one shot. Everyone fell silent. The various representatives looked at Oster in shock. Should we follow? Some looked at the soup pot in front of them, and fell into deep thoughts. Oh my gosh, Yabimiya covered her mouth. It was the first time she saw someone drink the insanely spicy soup. This is 10 times the insanely spicy, Rena swallowed. 10 times the insanely spicy, 10 times the happiness. Mag shrugged. Oster was weirdly confident in himself as someone who was long known to be a 10th tier powerhouse and the number one man among the orcs who claimed to be able to fight a giant dragon unarmed. How could a man who could eat a whole cow be afraid of a tiny bowl of soup? It was time to show off the orc's prowess, and let everyone know how formidable he was. The very next moment, Oster held his throat and slid off his chair, kneeling on the ground with his face flushed red. Roar! Oster landed a blow on the ground, and the entire restaurant shook. His face was as red as a metal piece that was just taken out from the fire, and beads of perspiration started rolling down his cheek. His tears fell uncontrollably, and he sounded like he was about to cry as he said, so spicy." The various representatives watched in shock at that scene. This was Oster, the number one man among the orcs. He actually cried from the spiciness. Is it time to arrange for the headlines of the next Orc News Daily? Shocking. Orcs number one powerhouse kneels in tears. The reason is so insane, Connie said as she stroked her chin. I think that headline works. Rex nodded. No way. The other representatives, who were going to follow suit quickly, put down the bowl of soup they just scooped up. Compared to showing off, it was more important for them to save their ego. This was a demonic soup that could make a 10th tier powerhouse cry. The Roth Empire must never lose at this time. Josh picked up his soup, and finished it in one shot. Big brother Josh, you don't eat hot pot like this. Vanessa could not stop Josh in time, and watched as he held his throat and slid to the ground, crying. Compared to the insanely spicy grilled fish that was accompanied by the delicious flavor, this insanely spicy hot pot soup was even more unbearable as it tormented his mouth. Hot pot is used to cook the food. You didn't even ask, and I didn't have the time to tell you, Vanessa said innocently. She quickly helped Josh up, and scooped another bowl of soup from the pot for him. What are you doing? Josh said with a glare. He leaned back into his chair, and his expression was still twisted as he was still overwhelmed by the spiciness. Treat poison with poison. Vanessa looked as though she had been through it before, and said, as long as you drink it fast enough, the spiciness will not be able to catch up with you, and you can even experience that satisfaction that the insanely spicy can bring. The more you drink it, the more satisfying it gets. Is it really that insane? Josh received the bowl of soup, not really buying it. He just wanted to get rid of the spiciness in his mouth right now. Yes. It's that insane. Vanessa nodded with conviction. Otherwise, why would it be called insanely spicy? Vanessa wouldn't lie to me, thought Josh, and finished the soup quickly in a few gulps. While he was drinking the soup, he felt the spiciness in his throat disappear a little. However, it was not because the fire had been extinguished, but because it was suppressed by an even stronger sense of spice. With that layered on top, there was actually a sense of satisfaction spiritually. How should he put it? It was like an extreme pain that brought a bit of satisfaction. That was quite insane. Sweat rolled down his face, and Josh's shirt was drenched in no time at all, putting him in a rather sorry state. That's crazy. I didn't think that Andre's son would be so tough even though he looks rather meek and mild. At this moment, the various representatives looked at Josh with admiration. If it were them, they would definitely not dare to have a bowl. Besides, Josh was already on his second bowl. This fellow, Oster, who had finally felt a little better, glared at Josh. As the first to drink the soup, he thought that his sacrifice was enough to shock everyone. He did not expect Josh to actually move on to his second bowl. Chief, we cannot let a human defeat us, the tribesman beside him incited him softly. Oster was also annoyed. The Orcs and Roth Empire had been at war for years, and though they did not really gain much from the war, they had never lost in terms of their awe and presence. Fill this up, Oster said decisively. He picked up a full bowl of soup, and gulped it down. Sick, Mag, who was standing in the kitchen, could not help but compliment him. It was the first time he saw someone drink 2 bowls of hot pot soup base before having the hot pot. I always find that I don't fit in because I'm not insane enough. Connie took a sip of soybean milk to calm her nerves. On the other side, Josh was already done with his second bowl. However, after he stopped drinking, he could feel the heat surge up his throat quickly once again, and it was nowhere less intense than the first time. Another bowl? Vanessa asked when she saw Josh hold on to his throat. Mm. Josh nodded fervently. Vanessa quickly scooped up another bowl of soup, and watched as Josh gulped it down. Odd, she could not help but comment, I didn't think that my royal brother would love spicy food so much. Next time, there's someone to eat hot pot with me. Again. Oster put down his bowl, and saw that Josh was already on his third bowl. The orc picked up the third bowl of soup that his henchman had already prepared for him, feeling as though he was about to cry. Is that how you have hot pot? Louis checked with Jinx softly when he saw the two drinking wildly. Could this be a new method of eating? Jinx was also rather uncertain. He looked at the soup in front of him, and hesitated to try. The other representatives were also undecided. They wanted to drink it, but they could not bring themselves to. However, it felt as though they would lose if they didn't drink it. Just then, Mia and others pushed in carts filled with various ingredients and an instruction manual on how to have the hot pot. Please enjoy the hot pot according to the instructions stated, Mia reminded warmly before leaving with a smile. Everyone quickly read the manual. It came with pictures, and was easy to understand. All they had to do was to cook the ingredients in the pot according to the stated time, and they could whip up a delicacy. So that's how you have hot pot. The various representatives were finally not so bewildered. They glanced at Josh and Oster again sympathetically. Josh and Oster could not help but pick up the instructions to have a look when they felt the gazes on them. Cough, cough, Oster coughed vigorously. The feeling of being choked by the spiciness was not enjoyable. Josh's breathing started to become slightly rapid. However, to ensure that he would not embarrass the Empire, he squeezed out a smile, and said, It has always been a tradition of the Empire to drink some soup before we start eating. It has? Vanessa asked in shock. Cough, cough, Josh coughed uncontrollably as well. The various representatives already had the instructions, but their gazes were attracted by Dracula and Camilla, who were having steak. Dracula had a knife and fork in his hands as he cut the steak up into small pieces. The sharp knife sliced through the beef, and the black pepper sauce drizzled down the area that was cut open. The succulent meat was seeping with juice, and the interior of the meat was still a little red. The enticing smell, together with the scent of the red wine, made one salivate uncontrollably. This steak looks not bad. Dracula picked up a piece of steak with his fork, and put it into his mouth. The moment he bit down gently on it, the fresh juice of the meat seeped out. The black pepper's fragrance gave it a perfect finishing touch, and the flavor danced at the tip of his tongue. From within the fragrance of the meat came a hint of sweetness of grape wine. It was like a sweet attack that made him indulge in it instantly. As a dignified vampire and a world-renowned collector of grape wines, Dracula was very knowledgeable about grape wine. The best grape wine naturally was the V grape wine from the Buffett winery. It was something money could not buy. Even with his status, Dracula could only get himself a small bottle occasionally. However, the grape wine in this steak was actually even more fragrant and intense than V grape wine. To think that grape wine of such quality was used only as a supplementary ingredient for steak. What a waste of a treasure! Dracula sighed to himself. However, he had to agree that the grape wine did bring even more layers to the tender beef. He could not find any fault in this steak, and it had completely changed his perception of beef. He swallowed the meat, and could not help but exclaim, "Phenomenal! Phenomenal!" Chapter 1760 Is it really like this? On the other side, Sally scooped up a spoonful of fried rice with colors as vibrant as the rainbow, and put it into her mouth. Still that familiar taste, Sally smiled. The light fragrance from the spring of life lingered and awakened her sleeping taste buds. It was refreshing and delicious. The rice had the perfect texture, and it did not feel too greasy, even for breakfast. After returning to the wind forest, she would often miss this young Joe fried rice. She did expect herself to be able to have it again so quickly, and even at Mamie restaurant. That touched her. Elliot glanced at Sally, who was eating her fried rice silently, and then at her fried rice. He wanted to speak, but chose to keep quiet in the end. Just when everyone was worried about what to do with the hot pot, Vanessa had already started cooking her food happily. She first made herself a flavorful bowl of dipping sauce, and gave it a bit more flavor with half a scoop of hot pot soup base without the oil floating on top. After that, she put the mala spicy beef into the pot excitedly, and dipped a piece of duck intestine in the pot. As a regular of Mamie restaurant's designated hot pot area, Vanessa knew the hot pot instructions by heart. After cooking her first duck intestine strictly according to the instructions, she quickly removed it from the boiling pot, and then inserted it into the dipping sauce, and then transported it to her mouth. The spicy and crispy duck intestine made delicious crunching sounds in her mouth. Vanessa smiled. The perfect amount of spice was just like the rain after a long drought, awakening her taste buds. Yes. It's this spiciness. The spiciness one can only enjoy at Mamie restaurant. Vanessa had not found the same taste despite searching the entire Rodeo for it. She could not even find anything remotely close. The spiciness was not as insane as the one in Mamie restaurant's hot pots. Beads of perspiration formed on her forehead. After she chewed and swallowed the crunchy duck intestine, she immediately went for the tripe. The tripe was taken out of the pot with a coat of red oil. It went one round into the dipping sauce first, and then into Vanessa's mouth. The spicy soup rushed in her mouth first like a vanguard. Immediately after that was the crispy tripe. It was as thin as a leaf, but it was neither hard nor rubbery. The crispy texture made Vanessa dance with joy. I love hot pot! Vanessa could not help exclaiming. She took out the mala spicy beef from the pot, and started enjoying it. Is it really like this? The various representatives who witnessed Oster and Josh cry were all puzzled now that they saw Vanessa enjoying her food. Is she acting in front of us? The goblins turned around, and murmured amongst themselves. Doesn't look like it. It's usually very difficult to make something disgusting look so good. One of them shook his head. I don't care. It might be a little spicy, but I reckon it shouldn't be a big problem. Louis swallowed his saliva as he poured the tripe and duck intestine quickly into the pot. After that, he controlled the tripe and duck intestine to dip in and out of the pot as he started his fast-forward hot pot mode. Very quickly, the duck intestine and tripe were done and suspended quietly in the air in front of Louis. Louis used his chopsticks to put a duck intestine into his mouth. This spiciness! Louis, who had been through the medium spicy, could not help but feel a shiver down his spine as his face flushed red when he tried the insanely spicy. This spiciness was not ordinary. This spiciness was a little insane. Luckily, he was mentally prepared. When the spiciness exploded in his mouth, he quickly shut off all parts of his body that could have a reaction triggered by that taste. Therefore, when he had the insanely spicy, he was not in that sorry state Oster and Josh were in. He pulled through the initial punch of the spiciness, and started chewing on the duck intestine when his taste buds slowly regained their senses. That was when the enjoyment arrived. Compared to when he had the medium spicy hot pot yesterday, this piece of duck intestine felt really rewarding, and its taste was even better. However, after swallowing the duck intestine, Louis's mouth was empty, and he suddenly felt a burning sensation in his throat. Without even thinking, Louis put a piece of tripe in his mouth. The joy brought about by the crispy tripe suppressed the surging flames. As long as I'm fast enough, the spiciness won't be able to catch up with me. Louis's eyes lit up. The tripe and duck intestine went into his mouth one after another without stopping. At the same time, he did not forget to add the other ingredients into the hot pot. Just when he finished his duck intestine and tripe, the sliced beef in the pot was ready, and the mala spicy beef was already cooking in the pot. Meanwhile, the quail eggs had also surfaced in the pot. This insanely spicy is indeed a different experience. It's so good I can't stop. Louis thought to himself. His hand and mouth could not stop moving at all as the food went in one by one. Wow, this giant dragon uncle is an expert. Vanessa looked at Louis in shock. She praised him softly, and wanted to try eating 10 pieces of duck intestine all at once too. The various representatives watched Louis in his mukbang one, and all of them could no longer hold it in. It did not seem that bad, and they all felt like trying instead. Hot pot, looks pretty good too, Dracula, who was eating the steak, said softly as he watched Louis and Vanessa enjoy themselves. Did you forget what happened to them? Camilla commented calmly. Dracula said thoughtfully. It looks like the two of them were just acting. Everyone, please do not stand on ceremony. We still have important things to discuss after breakfast, Michael said with a smile. He dipped his yushao in the soybean milk, and bit into it. He was rather satisfied with this outcome. Because of the insanely spicy hot pot, the various representatives forgot about their arguments, and instead gave off the feeling that they were all in it together. The various representatives suddenly recalled that the owner previously mentioned that everyone only had an hour to eat. Judging from the instructions for the hot pot, one really could not waste any more time if they wanted to fill themselves up within an hour. The duck intestine and tripe became the top pick for most of them on their virgin experience of hot pot. The representatives picked them with their chopsticks, and dipped them in the pot before putting the food into their mouths. Roar, one annotation text missing. Chapter 1761 Father, aren't we joining the meeting? Yes, this taste is insanely spicy. The representatives went back to their seats looking in a sorry state, and all glared at the kitchen. This scoundrel, did he poison the food? Weston's lips were swollen, and he was very pissed. The other representatives were also very angry. The image they had been maintaining all morning was all gone. Uncle Duck Face. Don't say that. Father would never put poison in the food. You were the one who ordered the insanely spicy but can't take it. How can you blame others? Amy, who had been laughing behind the counter for a while, said seriously. Uncle Duck. Duck Face. Weston glared at Amy as his anger rose. Her masters are Krasa and Urian, a fellow tribesman beside Weston reminded him softly. Weston's anger subsided significantly. He forced out a smile, and said, It's all right, I find this nickname pretty fine. Michael stood up with a smile, and said, Everyone, Boss Mag is the best chef in Chaos City, and is also one with professional ethics. I can guarantee that there is no problem with the food. However, every one of you is very brave to order the insanely spicy hot pot early in the morning. Once you pull through the initial discomfort, you'll be able to see the true beauty of this delicacy. I think you will regret it if you give up now. With Michael's word, everyone decided to let things go. Actually, none of them thought that anyone would lace the food in Chaos City. They were just traumatized by the insanely spicy. The duck intestine seemed not bad, even the spiciness could not cover its original taste. On top of that, it was surprisingly crispy. Makes one want to have another piece, the dwarf representative commented as he put 2 more pieces of duck intestines into the pot. Although it's a little too spicy, this tripe's texture is not bad. It's very thin, but it's exceptionally crispy. How special! A goblin representative nodded in agreement. He poured the entire plate of tripe into the pot, and with a pair of chopsticks in each hand, he dunked them in the pot 7 times, and put them into his mouth after that. These chopsticks, a troll used his thick fingers to carefully pinch the chopsticks which weren't even as thick as his fingers. After trying for a while, he threw the chopsticks aside, and pulled out a bunch of thin wooden sticks from nowhere. He skewered the meat and vegetables together on the sticks, and put them into the pot. After a while, he took out the sticks, and ate his food, enjoying it just as much as those using chopsticks. That's the pioneer of skewered food. Mag watched in the kitchen, and exclaimed, "What a talent!" Just like what Michael had said, after they pulled through the initial discomfort, the various representatives started to find joy in hot pot, and were even won over by its deliciousness. They were eating simple, sliced ingredients according to the instructions, but the moment the food was taken out, it had miraculously become a delicacy. Slurp. Josh ate the enoki mushrooms one mouthful after another with his eyebrows raised. It was just as Vanessa had said. As long as you didn't stop eating, your throat would not have the time to react to the spiciness. This oddly satisfying sense of being chased was rather addictive. The various representatives were no longer angry. They were absorbed in the harmonious mood of the hot pot, and some even started exchanging their joy of discovering their favorite ingredient. Hot pot would definitely have to go with beer. The various representatives, who had been tortured by the spiciness, finally recalled that they could order drinks. Beer was naturally their top choice. One mouthful of a large pint of cold beer with a thick layer of foam suppressed the fiery sensation instantly. That satisfaction was just like jumping into a pool of chilly water in the hot summer. Satisfying. Franklin took a large gulp of beer. He turned to look at Yabimiya, and said, "Young lady, get me a big barrel of this beer. I don't feel like I've drunk anything drinking it a little cup at a time." Yabimiya turned to look towards the kitchen. A big barrel of the beer would cost a hefty sum. Mag looked at Mia, and nodded slightly. "All right, please hold on for a while." Yabimiya nodded slightly, and turned to walk towards the kitchen. "Mia, get me a barrel too." "This beer is good," Louis said. "Me too," Douglas said as his face flushed red. Immediately after that, the forest trolls and orcs all said they wanted a big barrel of beer. Although Mag did not think drinking beer early in the morning was a good thing, it did not make sense to stop them from drinking if he had already served the insanely spicy hot pot. Therefore, he would agree to everyone's request. "Do I have to pay extra?" Michael asked Dykus, who was beside him, softly when he saw the various representatives gulping down the barrels of beer. Boss Mag did not say anything, and we did not dare to ask. Dykus shook his head. He watched the various representatives worriedly, and softly said, "Right now, I'm a little worried that they would get drunk." "This is only breakfast, don't worry, they won't get drunk." Michael shook his head. The atmosphere in the restaurant became harmonious with the good food and drinks served. The tense mood from earlier in front of the restaurant was quickly dispelled. After the 1-hour mealtime, the various representatives had already cleared their food. Most of them even burped satisfyingly. "Mealtime is over. I hope everyone will have a smooth meeting," Mag said with a smile. The hot pots were cleared, and each person was served a glass of warm water. Mag led the Mamie restaurant team out so that the restaurant could be used for the meeting. "Father, aren't we joining the meeting?" Amy asked curiously as she followed Mag out. "Yes, we're not joining the meeting. That's their business." Mag shook his head with a smile. He threw Ugly Duckling into the basket of his bicycle and hopped on. "Let's go. I'll send you to Daphne's to play. I have a lot of things to do today, so I might not have the time to play with you." "All right." Amy nodded obediently as she climbed onto the bicycle, and settled down on the back seat. In the restaurant, the fragrance of the hot pot slowly subsided. The representatives enjoyably leaned back into their chairs with satisfaction as they relaxed after the big sweat out. Just then, Michael stood up and looked at the representatives with a smile. "Everyone, we've had breakfast, and it's time we get to business." As the representatives of their respective races, they had the responsibility to fight for their race's interest as well as uphold their image in front of the other races. This meeting was a little rushed, but it was greatly supported by the giant dragons, and was set in Chaos City. Furthermore, it was held before the peace talks, therefore, the various races placed high importance on it. However, the various races only guessed that this meeting might have something to do with the peace talks. They did not know what the details of the meeting were, and neither did they know what the giant dragons and Chaos City wanted to do. Josh sat upright after stealing a glance at Irina. This was his first time representing the Roth Empire in a meeting of this level. If he could satisfy the king with his performance here, that meant that he would not be far from defeating Sean. Therefore, he had to perform well. I really want to go back to sleep. Vanessa leaned into her chair, and covered her mouth as she yawned. Last night, she was so excited about having hot pot that she could not sleep. However, after waking up early and having the hot pot, she was fully satisfied, and the mention of getting to business made the sleepiness set in. She could barely keep her eyes open. Michael, the peace talks are in a few days. Why can't we wait till then? Is there a need to have this meeting just a few days before the talks? Oster asked. The various representatives all looked at Michael. They were all puzzled as well. It's not because we're impatient, but because time waits for no one, Michael said solemnly. A few days ago, Chaos City and the Giant Dragons jointly sent everyone invitations to gather at Chaos City urgently because there is something we need to discuss. This matter is a life and death situation for all races on the Norland continent. The three of us drafted the joint application, and sent it out with Chaos City, Lewis said in a deep voice. Douglas and Franklin nodded in agreement with Lewis's words. The expressions of the various representatives changed. What could be this horrific disaster that the Norland continent was facing that could make the three big shots of the giant dragons put so much importance on it? Josh looked at Michael and the giant dragons. These people could be considered the top powerhouses of the Norland continent. The giant dragons were already powerful as a whole. They were on par with, if not better than, the Roth Empire. If it was an opponent that even they had to take so seriously, what could it be? Could it be? Josh thought of a certain possibility, and a hint of nervousness flashed past his eyes. Irina was observing Josh at the moment. She did not sense anything when she saw him from afar yesterday, but Josh's aura felt a little strange to her today. Irina and Josh had known each other for years, and they had been rather comfortable with each other. He could be considered one of her rare, few friends. However, she had not expected that Josh would actually lay hands on Mag and Amy. On top of that, he had even lied to her after that, and even offered to help her look for them hypocritically. She hated him so much that she wanted to flatten him with her foldable chair. However, when she saw Josh this time, he felt a little different, as though there was something melancholic about him. Could it be a psychological thing? Irina thought to herself. She did suspect that the devils could be at play, but the holy light did not give her any signs. Michael solemnly said, the Norland continent could enjoy peace for the past century because of the peace accord. Everyone could live peacefully, and Chaos City was created because of that to become the city made by people of various races. As the third city lord of Chaos City, I am very grateful to everyone for abiding by the peace accord for the past century. I am thankful that you've restrained yourself to allow the Norland continent to have its treasured peace. However, the 100-year pact that the various races have signed is almost up, and following that might be the start of another war with countless deaths and injuries. Therefore, first up on the agenda for today's meeting, I would like to represent Chaos City to call upon everyone to continue to sign the peace accord so that we can have another century of peace. The restaurant was silent. Everyone looked around, and was not in a rush to voice out their opinion. Everyone actually expected that. Chaos City had a very unique existence. Back then, the peace accord was signed here, and Basti prison was built here to lock up the war criminals. On top of that, the first batch of residents in Chaos City consisted of the prison guards of Basti prison and their family members. Chaos City was where people of different races gathered, and it could be considered the center of the Norland continent. Geographically, it was very unique as well. It was where people of different races traded, and was very tolerant of everyone's differences. Therefore, in a short span of a century, it became a bustling city of 1 million people from everywhere. It was a place where different races could settle down and live harmoniously. The city lord's castle and the Grey Temple were set up in the early phases of Chaos City, transforming the place from a city of crime and evil to the safest city on the Norland continent. That was what attracted a group of powerhouses from various races with the same values, allowing Chaos City to have substantial power on the Norland continent. It was born from peace, and would naturally want peace to continue. This was aligned with Chaos City's wishes, and also that of the weaker stakeholders. Josh frowned upon hearing that. Before they set off, he was summoned to the palace. He still remembered what the king had instructed him. The generations of people's hard work made the Roth Empire stronger than ever. How could they be willing to settle with that tiny piece of land? We, the vampires, agree with Michael. Peace is such a beautiful word. We no longer want to be the bloodthirsty killer of the night. Red wine is the new way of life, Dracula said with a smile as he swirled the red wine in his glass. Everyone looked at Dracula. This young vampire ancestor had already started making decisions for the vampires. Had Dracula, can you represent all the vampires? Weston mocked. I'm one of the two only ancestors of the vampires, the youngest ancestor in history, and the future leader of the vampires. Is it that difficult to make a decision? Dracula said to Weston with a smile. You, on the other hand, are just a stepping stone for SAHDR, or maybe the wallpaper for Thelma. You. Weston's face flushed red with anger instantly. He glared at Dracula. How dared that cowardly grass-eating vampire talk back to him? The representatives who knew some insiders' stories all smiled. The chivalrous weren't weak among the demons. Among them, the Great Elder, SAHDR, was known to be the most destructive demon, while the Second Elder, Thelma, was also widely known to be an advocate for war. Compared to the two of them, Weston, in third place, was indeed reduced to a wallpaper. His position in the tribe was also very awkward. You don't have to say anything. In any case, you can't make the decision. Dracula stopped Weston from talking straight away. He might very well be thinking of usurping the throne, Camilla commented. He wouldn't dare, Dracula mocked. You too. This is infuriating. Weston was so angry that smoke began rising from his head. The other representatives watched the show happily. They didn't expect a show to start just as they began the meeting. The war between their tribes had yet to end, hence, they only sent 2 9th-tier demons for the meeting. The 10th-tier powerhouses did not dare to leave the boundless sea realm. The fear demon representative remained silent, seemingly unwilling to join in the argument. Anyone could tell that the different tribes on the demon islands would never come to a consensus before the peace talks. That meant that the terrifying demon allied forces could not be formed. Under such circumstances, it would just be a joke for any of the demon tribes to declare a racial war, because they would not even be able to defeat the goblins. We, the goblins, agree to Chaos City's suggestion to protect the peace that we have now so that all races will be able to benefit. War would only bring death and calamity. It would not be beneficial for most races, the goblin representative said to show his support for Chaos City as he stood up. As a race that was not strong enough, the goblins had been badly hit by the previous racial war. They'd only managed to survive the war and gain a foothold on the Norland continent because of their extensive underground caverns that were easy to guard but difficult to attack. The 100-year agreement had ended. The goblins, who were unable to defend themselves, would naturally be happy to join hands with Chaos City and benefit from it. That was how the railroad from Chaos City to the Goblin territory came about. We, the dwarves, also agree with Michael. We hope to renew this peace treaty. The Eason Castle has been guarding our piece of land and stayed neutral to all races for so many years. We do not wish to see a racial war start again, the dwarf representative said as he stood up. The dwarves had improved in their skills, and had a lot of craftsmen, but were not good at war. At the same time, they did not have enough people in their army, so they could only protect themselves by closing Essen Castle up. If a war were to persist for years, no one could guarantee that Essen Castle could stay safe forever. Therefore, it would naturally be best not to have war. The Folk tribe and the 72 anti-war Orc tribe alliance also agreed to renew the peace agreement. We're against a new racial war, Connie said calmly as she stood up. Everyone looked at Connie. This young chief of the Folk tribe was Isaiah's youngest daughter. She had garnered quite some attention by replacing Ferdinand to become the Folk tribe's new chief previously. The one protecting her would naturally be the hairless monk, Rex. Because of him, the Folk tribe, which was in turmoil, managed to keep its spot as the second strongest Orc tribe. However, judging from her age and strength, she really could not be compared to Oster. What rights do you have to represent half of the Orc tribes? Oster looked at Connie fiercely. I have the letter of authorization signed personally by the other tribe's chiefs, and I am the chief of the Folk tribe. On top of that, I have the conscience of an Orc, Connie said as she took out a letter of authorization filled with signatures. Oster's face fell, and he said, the Orcs are one entity. You cannot decide whether we're going to war or not. Who's an entity with you? Have I agreed to it? Connie glanced at Oster, and mocked, keep those hypocritical words of yours. If you want a war, sure, but don't you drag the other tribes down with you. We're not agreeing to it. Isaiah's daughter indeed. Despite her age, she doesn't lose to Oster at all in terms of composure and presence. How rare, Douglas said as he looked at Connie with admiration. Indeed. Lewis nodded in agreement. The other representatives did not look at Connie condescendingly. For a young lady to return to her tribe triumphantly after everyone in her family had died, it really did not just depend on luck. Rex looked at Connie dotingly and proudly. Oster glanced at Rex, and finally sat back down. The Orcs were very strong. They had an army of warriors made up of fearless Orcs from the various tribes. However, if half of the Orcs refused to go to war, they would not have an advantage over the Roth Empire, and might even be crushed by their steel rides and magic casters. Darn lass! Oster clenched his fists tightly. There were a few days left until the peace talks, and Connie had to die before that. The Night Elves support Chaos City. Irina raised her hand, and swept a glance across the various representatives as she coldly said, also, since everyone is here today, I would like to add that when we return, if there's anyone who's still holding my people in captivity, they'd better send them all back to Chaos City. If I were to go over to fetch them myself. You should ask the representative of the Fear Demons how Bashir died. The various representatives felt as though a knife was held at their throat. They swallowed their saliva nervously while considering quickly going back to check if they had any elves in captivity. If Irina and Alex were to come looking for them, that would be terrible. The Fear Demon representative at the side was afraid to speak. Bashir really had not ended up well. One would rather offend an entire race than offend this woman. Sally looked at Irina and smiled, but quickly regained her straight face. Elliot looked rather uncomfortable. The elves were put to shame now that Irina had to stand up for their people. The giant dragons have already come to a consensus. Dragon Island wishes for all races to follow the current clauses in the peace treaty and maintain this current situation to prevent another racial war from happening, Lewis said. If there's anyone who wishes to pick up a fight, the Tyranno dragons are willing to join in, Franklin said with a smirk. The restaurant fell silent. Anyone could sense the threatening tone in Lewis and Franklin's words. The various races now had to take into consideration the giant dragons forcefully interfering with whether the peace treaty would be renewed. Oster's eyes gleamed. He thought it still would be worth a fight if it was just the Roth Empire. However, if Dragon Island the Tyranno dragons at that was put into the equation, that would not be something the Orcs could handle. The Forest Troll representative turned to look at the Roth Empire representative team, and was not in a hurry to voice his opinion. Many other representatives also looked at the Roth Empire representatives who had yet to make their stand. Only the Elves, Forest Trolls, and the Roth Empire had yet to make their stand. The Elves have no intention to start another racial war. We hope that we could renew the peace accord with the other races and safeguard our peace, Sally said as she stood up. Elliot looked at Sally in astonishment, nearly jumping off his chair. Chapter 1764 That Man is Here. Sally was the new Elven princess, and was the best candidate for the next Elven queen after Irina had led the Night Elves out of the Wind Forest. Helena let her lead the team to participate in such an important meeting so that she could gain more experience, and at the same time to publicly announce that she was the Elven princess. Therefore, she would naturally be the spokesperson for the Elves and the Wind Forest. The other representatives were not very surprised by the Elves' choice. Throughout the century, the Elves had been very knowledgeable, and had been improving at a steady rate as they progressed to become a strong race. However, all this was completely gone after the Elven Queen went into seclusion and Irina resurfaced, killed 3 10th tier Elves, and led the slave Elves and some warrior Elves out of the Wind Forest. Now the Elves had to think about how to settle the chaos within the Wind Forest, and deal with the increasingly influential Night Elves who had settled down in Chaos City instead of trying to fight for a piece of the pie with the other races. Josh also looked at Sally in shock. This was not supposed to happen in his plan. The Wind Forest was supposed to stand with the Roth Empire. The Forest Trolls could not hide their shock as well. War is cruel. However, that does not mean that the status quo is right. Josh stood up. He calmly said, "The Roth Empire has over 100 million citizens, which is more than the other 6 races combined. However, we are among the last 3 with regards to our territory. On top of that, on our northern side, we have areas of extreme conditions that are uninhabitable. In the past, humans were weak, and we sacrificed a lot to emerge as the last one standing in the racial war. We had no say at all when we signed the peace accord and got our share of land. Now that the century-long agreement is up, the Roth Empire needs a larger piece of land for its people. We are unable to accept the clauses of the previous peace accord and renew it." Josh might appear scholarly and weak, but his words were impactful. He carried himself with the imposing aura a prince of a large empire should have. Big brother Josh and royal father want to start a war? But what he said did make sense. But if a war was to start, many innocent soldiers would lose their lives, right? Vanessa, who was dozing off, suddenly became wide awake as she listened to the debate. After listening to Josh's words, she was deep in thought. She did not want the Roth Empire to be embroiled in war. The various representatives all had different expressions. After Franklin's threat, no one dared to go against him, except for the Roth Empire with a very clear goal to redistribute the territories. If we were to start the racial war again, how much land does Andre think that he can claim? Franklin asked Josh. Josh looked Franklin in the eye, and said, "If the giant dragons do not join the war, the Roth Empire will win. And if the giant dragons were to join the war, the Roth Empire and the giant dragons could split land amongst them," Josh replied. A commotion broke out in the restaurant all of a sudden. This fellow was belittling all the other races. The Roth Empire had grown stronger day by day, and all the races could see that. On top of that, Alex, who appeared out of nowhere, completely changed everyone's perception that humans were weak. Even so, no one felt that the Roth Empire was on par with the giant dragons. Today, the second prince of the Roth Empire made a grand declaration that the Roth Empire could wipe out the other races and compete with the giant dragons. "Arrogant brat!" Oster chided. He shot up and glared at Josh as he mocked, "The Roth Empire can't even cross the Orcs' borders, and have never had a big victory in the wars at the border, and you dare to say that you can rule the entire land. Perhaps to you, Orcs, it was a war, but to the Roth Empire's steel rides, that was just a practice session for our soldiers. We have a yearly shift change for our top 10 military departments. Josh looked at Oster sympathetically. It's not that we can't cross the border, it's just that this poor piece of land doesn't really catch our eyes. Oster stumbled and sat back into his seat, as though he had been dealt a huge blow. So every year, the Roth Empire's army would be slightly weaker for a period of time, not because they could not adjust to the season, but because they were changing to a new batch of soldiers. The orcs around swallowed their saliva, looking as though they had lost their souls. Upon hearing that, the other representatives started to take things seriously. The Roth Empire and orcs always had their wins and losses in the border war in all these years. Therefore, the other races always thought that the Roth Empire was just slightly stronger than the orcs, but never to the point where they could completely thrash the latter. Therefore, the other races had never taken the empire seriously. No one knew that the Roth Empire had been growing secretly throughout the century, and had already surpassed the other races by a large margin, to the point of catching up to the giant dragons. That really caught everyone off guard. The forest troll representative stood up after finding some courage, and said, "The forest trolls also think that the previous territory division was unfair, and we are also unwilling to renew the peace accord. We request to have the land redivided based on the various races' strength." The forest trolls were actually rather strong as well, but they were lacking in numbers. However, as long as they reached adulthood, they would be able to reach the 5th tier, and their middle to top tier combat abilities were really astonishing. Even the giant dragons would have to be careful and consider how best to deal with the Roth Empire and forest trolls together. The situation, which was looking good, suddenly made a turn for the worse. Elliot stood up anxiously. "The elves, Elliot, watch yourself," Sally chided. Elliot was stumped. He turned back to look at Sally, and anxiously said, "Sally, this is not something you could decide." "High Priestess Helena, I don't care what the High Priestess told you. I am the Elven Princess and also the leader of this team. My words represent the elves, and I will naturally be responsible for all my people," Sally said coldly. Elliot wanted to continue. "But I command you to sit and stay silent." Sally flashed out her tablet and ordered expressionlessly. You'll do us in." Elliot let out a long sigh and sat back down. "Good fellow, you've got some guts." Franklin saw Josh in a different light. He then closed his eyes a little frustratedly. He didn't expect that the giant dragons would be threatened by the humans one day. In the past, the giant dragons were the ones who protected the humans so that the latter did not get exterminated by the demons and orcs. "It's not guts. It's confidence," Josh said calmly. He raised his eyebrows, and proudly said, "There will be no doubt regarding the outcome of the war, and we will be able to get what we want." The confidence that the soldiers of the Empire exchanged their lives and blood for was not for the royal family to use in war. Just then, the restaurant door opened, and a silhouette carrying a sword walked in. Weston jumped up from his chair. The various representatives were all shocked. Although Alex had returned months ago and appeared at Rodu, he had never shown his face in public, and was very secretive in his movements, which made him difficult to track. Today, just when they were still puzzled as to why Alex was not around, he arrived. Josh turned back stiffly to look at Alex, who had walked through the door. He had an unnatural expression, and his eyes darted around. Richard stood up cautiously with the same expression as he stood beside Josh with his magic caster's staff in his hand. Alex was undoubtedly the scariest opponent in close combat. No one could escape his sword in a 2-meter range, much less a mere magic caster like Richard. "You haven't changed at all after so many years," Dracula said in astonishment as he looked at Alex. "Uncle, can you defeat him now?" Camilla asked curiously. "No," Dracula said truthfully. "You're the ancestor now. Benson still got hacked in one blow." Dracula shrugged with resignation, and said, "Some people are born unreasonably. You're a coward with a legitimate excuse." Camilla nodded. She glanced at Irina. So is she. Is this big sister Irina's man? He's so handsome. Connie could not help but make heart-shaped eyes. She had heard legends about Alex since she was young. Even if the Orcs were not on good terms with the Roth Empire, that did not affect their respect for Alex. Father said that he was a human and opponent worthy of respect. However, her gaze was quickly captured by the figure in Alex's hand. That's Big Brother? Connie bit her lip. Irina had already mentioned this to her yesterday. Ferdinand did not die, and would appear in today's meeting as an important witness to the existence of the devil. However, now that she'd seen the frail and skinny Ferdinand, Connie still could help but feel upset. Ferdinand? Wasn't he dead? Oster was equally shocked. Irina used the holy light to purify Ferdinand, who had sold his soul to the devil, causing his plans to be wrecked. He thought that Ferdinand was already dead, and did not expect to see him here once again. Alex, long time no see. Josh looked at Alex. His voice was a little hoarse, and although he tried his best to produce a smile, he could not squeeze one out no matter how. Even if 3 years had passed, he still felt the immense pressure when once again faced with this man whom he had once pulled down from the peak. Mag swung Ferdinand to the ground as he calmly told Josh, "You didn't kill me back then. That's being too full of yourself." Perhaps this was a misunderstanding. Josh could feel the deathly aura. He subconsciously took half a step back. His throat was so parched he could barely make a sound. Misunderstanding. Mag smiled. This second prince is rather humorous. Yes. We can resolve this misunderstanding at any time. You are the Roth Empire's general, and the Empire needs you now. Josh readjusted himself very quickly. He stood up straight, and looked at Mag cautiously as he said, "Father mentioned that as long as you were willing to return, you would be the Roth Empire's marshal. Above all but one." Mag looked at Josh, who had regained composure. This second prince was indeed good at mind games. He was much stronger psychologically compared to Sean. He could even gloss over a life and death vengeance casually with a mistake, and quickly move on to recruitment. The various representatives all had their motives. The representatives who had taken part in the assassination on that rainy night all averted their gazes at the moment, afraid to meet Alex's eyes. No one would end up well after trifling with this killer. "Don't worry, I won't kill you today." Mag glanced at Josh. He turned to look at Michael, and said, "Sir, I've brought him over to you." Josh heaved a sigh of relief silently. He suddenly realized that his back and palms were already soaked in perspiration. After sensing his fear of Alex, he became frustrated. How could he, the mighty second prince, be like this, if not that he was unable to defeat him? This fellow. However, before Josh could think further, his gaze was drawn by Ferdinand, who was lying on the ground. A hint of devilish red glow flashed past his eyes. It's a familiar aura. Could he also be? Irina looked at Josh. For a split second just now, she seemed to have detected a hit of devilish aura. However, Ferdinand was lying just beside Josh, and it might be that the devilish aura on the former had yet to be completely dispelled. This is... The various representatives all looked at the scrawny youth lying on the ground with bewilderment. Who could this person be that Alex had to personally bring him over? "Thank you." Michael nodded. He stood up, and said in a resonating voice, "Everyone, the reason for inviting all of you here today, other than to talk about renewing the peace accord, was most importantly to let all of you in on an urgent matter that concerns the survival of each and every race. The Roth Empire and Forest Trolls might have their own thoughts, but what each race on the Norland continent urgently needs to solve is not the reallocation of territories, but a terrifying existence." Josh's eyes darted around quickly. He looked away from Ferdinand, but deep inside, he was utterly flustered. He could ascertain that this person had gotten that same thing that he did. But how did he end up like this? And why did he appear on this occasion? A terrifying existence? What's that? The dwarf representative asked. Everyone looked at Michael curiously. The representatives sent out by the strongest races on the Norland continent had all gathered here. The top 3 of the giant dragons were also seated here. What could be considered a terrifying existence to them? It's the devil. A group of devils who had survived from ancient times till now. You could also call them the Great Old Ones. They are very powerful, and could not be killed. They also have a scary ability to bewitch a person, Michael said. Devil. The various representatives were all bewildered and confused. The devils would bewitch individuals to make them offer them their soul. After that, the devil would control the individuals to make them kill each other, turning this world into a living hell, Michael explained patiently. I know that all of you might not be able to accept this at the moment. Therefore, I've asked Alex to bring this youth, who had offered his soul to the devil, here. He is Ferdinand, the son of Isaiah from the Folk tribe. Just a month ago at the conferring ceremony, he was exposed by Irina's holy light, showing that he had swapped souls with the devil, and was cleansed by the holy light. Back then, Chief Oster and Chief Connie were at the scene. They can stand witness to this. Everyone turned to look at Oster and Connie. Such explosive news was a little beyond their range of acceptance. He was once my closest brother, but he was bewitched by the devil to kill all my kin, including himself. Connie took out her grandmother's diary with pain in her eyes. My grandmother had her guesses about that, but she still fell into evil hands. The devil killed them all. Although Oster was unhappy that Irina had foiled his plans, he did sense a shiver down his spine upon recalling Ferdinand's creepy performance. He hesitated for a while before nodding, and saying, I was there on that day. Ferdinand was not behaving like a normal orc. Also, he did have a scary aura on him. It was not just powerful, but also as depressing as an abyss. The Devil King will still descend. You fellows will all have to die, Ferdinand, who was lying on the ground, suddenly twisted around in an attempt to stand up. He screeched, and his eyes were glowing with a bright red light. With a mighty kick, Mag subdued him and made him fall back to the ground. Ferdinand's strange behavior, together with Connie and Oster's statements, made the other representatives feel as though they had fallen into an icy hole. A terrifying existence was suddenly thrown to them. Perhaps, he was just triggered. We would always have a few of these loonies buried every year, the goblin representative said. Everyone's eyes lit up. That was not impossible. I know that everyone might not believe it, so I invited the hairless monk back with the intention of getting him to tell you about what happened to the Urba tribe a century ago. Michael looked at Rex. The Urba tribe's case shook the entire continent. Many of those present knew something about the case, and had even gone to the scene to take a look. Recalling that already made them feel like throwing up. Back then, the conclusion of the case was that the hairless monk slaughtered them for revenge. However, there were still many questions unanswered. Therefore, Rex was sent to Basti prison. Everyone heard that he had left Basti prison a while ago, and had become the master of the new chief of the Folk tribe. That night, I was on the way to the Urba tribe, indeed to take revenge on them for bullying my mother and me. However, I merely wanted to teach a few of those that left a deep impression on me a lesson. But the moment I reached the tribe, Rex recounted what he saw that night. The creepy ritual, the hysterical orcs of the Urba tribe, the cannibalistic slaughtering, the horrifying scenes flashed past everyone's head as Rex described what happened. Everyone's face grew pale slowly, and they shook from fear. Those who had been to the Urba tribe to take a look could not help but feel nauseous. They finally knew how the creepy wounds on the corpses came about. It was not a one-sided massacre, but a chaotic and hysterical scene of orcs tearing each other apart. No sentient race could be capable of something so scary. The devil bewitched them, and made them kill themselves. Rex finished his account calmly. A drop of cold sweat trickled down his cheek. One could tell that he was actually not calm inside from the protruding veins caused by him clenching his fists too tightly. It was dead silent in the restaurant. Everyone was flustered. I'm not sure we're in good luck or bad luck to have found the devil that was sealed, but the seal is about to lose its effectiveness, Michael said solemnly. Chapter 1766 Isn't it invincible? The various representatives present were all spokespeople for the Norland continent's greatest powers, but an even greater and more powerful existence than them had existed. They were bloodthirsty and cruel. They had existed for eons, powerful and terrifying. There was a hint of panic in Josh's expression amidst the shock. Are you the devil that they are talking about? What exactly are you? Are you guys really going to destroy this world? Josh screamed in his heart. However, that voice didn't answer, making him even more flustered. The statue that he got came from the Urba tribe, and Rex's earlier description made his hair stand on ends. Although he hadn't given his soul completely to that fellow, they were all in the same boat now. Perhaps my perception is wrong? Irina stared at Josh with slightly furrowed brows doubtfully. She seemed to have sensed a hint of evil aura from Josh, but she couldn't find anything when she probed further. Does the devil really exist? Camilla asked softly. What the hell is that? Dracula frowned. It sounded rather formidable. We are vampires. We shouldn't be scared by them, Dracula said calmly. Richard stood up with a grave expression, and asked, Lord Michael, you said you've found the sealed devil, so where is the devil now? Can you bring us there to take a look? As he was one of the Roth Empire delegation's representatives, Richard's job was to advise Josh. Josh had already laid the Roth Empire's cards on the table, and was about to negotiate the most beneficial terms for the Empire when Michael suddenly talked about the devil. Yes. A mere verbal statement is no guarantee. There aren't any records about the devil's existence in us Elves history books, either, Elliot chimed in with doubt too. All the representatives slowly calmed down, and looked at Michael with doubt. For so many years, all the races had never heard about the devil's existence. Why did it suddenly appear now? Krasu and Urian were the first to discover the sealed devil. It was discovered because the seal was damaged, and the evil aura seeped out from it, Michael explained. They are still guarding the seal right now. They're trying to repair the seal and reseal the devil. However, the situation isn't optimistic. The seal's spell formation is too ancient, and analyzing it is a big problem. Lewis and I went to the place where the seal is a few days ago. That fellow's power is way beyond our imagination. It will definitely be a terrifying catastrophe for the Norland continent if it escapes from the seal, Douglas said in a low voice with a grave expression. Although this is humiliating, I still have to let you all know how powerful it is. I would have been killed by that fellow if it hadn't been for the seal's restraint and the combined effort of Krasu, Urian, Douglas, and Novan, Lewis said with a solemn expression too. Everyone exclaimed, and began to feel a tinge of fear again. Lewis was an extremely formidable existence, and his power was among the Norland continent's top 5. Yet, he was almost killed by the devil in the seal, and only barely escaped with the help of 4 extremely powerful 10th-tier powerhouses. One could only imagine what kind of terrifying power that devil had. Richard paled slightly too. His power couldn't even compare to that of Krasu, let alone that of Lewis. If the devil was really as powerful as described by Lewis and the others, it would be a terrifying threat to the Roth Empire. It wasn't advantageous to His Majesty's plan of conquering the world. With Krasu and the others' help, I had cut off one of its tentacles. However, this wasn't even considered a scratch to it. In the blink of an eye, it grew a new tentacle again. Mag tossed out a section of the frozen tentacle. All of them stared at that tentacle which was covered with lifelike blood-red eyeballs. Just looking at it gave them a sense of fear. What made all of them even more concerned was that even Alex, who had the strongest melee capability on the Norland continent, could only cut off one tentacle of that devil with Krasu and the others' assistance. Furthermore, that scary regenerative power could eradicate that harm immediately. It made them feel a chill from the bottom of their heart. Then, isn't it invincible? Connie gulped and moved closer to Rex. It's very difficult to deal with. Rex nodded with a solemn expression. Invincible? Josh looked at Alex. A glint of red light flashed across his eyes suddenly, and he clenched his fists subconsciously. Alex, who was almost invincible in his eyes, actually had an opponent whom he couldn't handle at all, and yet Josh had a chance to receive assistance from that existence. You'll gain an immensely powerful friend once it escapes from the seal. A familiar voice appeared in his mind again, and it was very bewitching. Josh's lips began to curl up, and his hands at his side started to quiver. This chap is indeed tainted with the evil aura. Perhaps he has already given his soul to the devil? Irina narrowed her eyes. She accurately sensed the evil aura emanating from Josh in that instant. This meant that he had most probably given his soul to the devil, or at least had contact with the devil. His situation was rather different, so compared to Borg, Alfred, or Ferdinand, who was lying on the ground now, the evil aura on Josh was very faint, and he didn't display the madness after being possessed by the devil. He looked too normal, and therefore she wasn't able to ascertain his situation immediately. However, what was certain was, he definitely had come in contact with the devil. That was why he was tainted by the evil aura. The acknowledgement of the two big shots from the dragon race and Alex was equivalent to cementing the factuality of this matter. Given their identities and status, they wouldn't deceive all the races together. Moreover, Krasu and the others were involved, and no power could make them say the same thing. Richard looked at Michael. Lord Michael, since you all know where the seal is, could you bring us there to have a look? If it truly is as you described, this matter concerns the survival of all the races on the Norland continent, we should do our part too. Words alone were no proof. This matter could influence the king's judgment, so he had to see that so-called devil with his own eyes before he could report this to the king. All the other representatives agreed with him. Even though there was the endorsement from Alex and the rest, all this devil's talk was beyond their cognition. They got to see it with their own eyes before they could believe it. Michael nodded. This matter cannot be resolved by Chaos City and the Dragon Tribe alone. This is also why we invited all races' representatives here urgently. We have set up a teleportation portal to the place where the seal is in the middle of Aiden Square. Would all the representatives please follow me? Since this matter concerns all the races on the Norland continent, then we, Lantisteans, should do our part too. Right at this moment, a voice appeared outside of the restaurant. The restaurant's door opened outwards, and 10 merfolk powerhouses wearing the same silver armor stood at the door. The other party had 10 people, and they were all 10th tier powerhouses. Their number of 10th tier powerhouses even exceeded those of the goblin race and the dwarf race. Every race had sent their representatives, so who were these people who claimed to be powerhouses from Lantist? Michael was also looking at the people at the entrance with shock. He instinctively looked at Mag. Coming up with a team of 10 10th tier powerhouses who didn't belong to any of the races was almost an impossible task. Moreover, none of the powerhouses were known to them. One had to know that a 10th tier powerhouse was the highest form of existence on the Norland continent. Even a powerful race like the dragons only had a total of 30 to 40 10th tier giant dragons. The Roth Empire's number of 10th tier powerhouses was only close to the giant dragon's number because of its huge population base and the Magus Tower and the Knights College sparing no effort in training them. A race that had 10 10th tier powerhouses was able to conquer a territory on the Norland continent for themselves. Elliot looked at the people at the door, and exclaimed, "Aren't they the mysterious powerhouses who appeared at the boundary of the goblins' territory?" Although they were not wearing the black uniforms today, their aura was the same. The battle at the underground cavern near the goblins' territory boundary was the elven race's disgrace. The Wind Forest had sent out all its elite forces and powerhouses to annihilate the thousands of night elves, and yet the Wind Forest was defeated, and the elven marshal, Borg, perished in the battle. And it was this group of mysterious powerhouses who suddenly appeared and forcefully stopped the elves' attack, and made them retreat, changing the almost certain outcome of this battle. It was called the Incident of the Thugs in Suits in history. After that defeat, the Night Elves went southwards to Chaos City, and set up their base. It later triggered the Slaves' Uprising incident, which affected the Elven race greatly. One could say that if it weren't for this group of mysterious powerhouses, Irina and the Night Elves would have been eradicated at the underground cavern at the Goblins' border, and the Elven race would have the power to compete on the continent. Of course, if it weren't for this group of powerhouses, Borg wouldn't have died, and Elliot wouldn't have had the right to sit here now. The various representatives looked at the people at the door in shock when they heard Elliot's exclamation. That annihilation battle with great strength disparity had finally ended with the Elven race's defeat. It had caused a huge commotion on the Norland continent. The identity of those mysterious powerhouses had become an unsolved mystery, and nobody knew the answer till now. Today, everything was going to be revealed. The sudden appearance of a power that had 10 10th-tier powerhouses was going to bring a huge impact to the Norland continent's situation. If they decided to take on the anti-war stance, even the powerful Roth Empire would have to reconsider the possibility of conquering the entire continent. Dexter led the Lantistine powerhouses through the door, and stood at the entrance. They didn't take any other actions. Instead, they simply looked at Mag. Everyone's gazes landed on Mag instinctively too. This group of mysterious powerhouses had previously appeared to save Irina and the Night Elves, and Alex was there too, so what was their connection? I am Michael, the City Lord of Chaos City. May I ask which race you all came from? As the host, Michael needed to find out about this group of mysterious powerhouses that suddenly appeared. Dexter didn't answer. Instead, he said a few words in Lantistine to Mag. Mag nodded slightly before he turned to say to Michael, "They are the people from Lantist. They came from the bottom of the boundless sea realm. They have been living at the bottom of the sea for the past thousands of years. Now, they want to establish a friendly relationship with all the races, so they asked me to bring them to this meeting." The bottom of the boundless sea realm. The demons' representatives were all shocked. Nobody could have guessed that there was such a powerful race living at the bottom of the boundless sea realm. Therefore, for the past thousands of years, we have been coexisting peacefully, with us living on the islands, while they lived under the sea. Dracula said with surprise. Perhaps they didn't want to come ashore, Camilla replied calmly. All the other representatives had different expressions. According to Alex's description, Lantist should be quite a strong race. They could defeat the Elven race's elite forces head-on, so they should have quite a big number of powerhouses. Alex had been alone after leaving the Roth Empire. Irina's Night Elves were still immature. 30,000 Elven slaves couldn't muster substantial combat power within a short period of time. Even though Alex was powerful, he could not change the Norland continent's situation. However, if Lantist, which had more than 10 10th-tier powerhouses, supported him, the outcome would be completely different. Nobody knew how powerful Lantist was, and nobody knew how many powerhouses and people they had living at the bottom of the sea. The unknown was the most terrifying. Oh, I see. Michael was thoughtful. Chaos City, too, paid attention to that group of mysterious powerhouses who appeared in the battle at the Goblins' border. He even asked Irina privately, but he didn't obtain any useful information. However, if Alex could make them appear at that time, he definitely could make them stand on his side. This was definitely good news for the pro-peace camp. Michael nodded, and said, "The matters that we're discussing today concern the future of every race on the Norland continent. For Lantist, as a power and a race on the Norland continent, it's naturally the best if they could get along peacefully, and join in the battle against the devil." Mag repeated Michael's words to Dexter. Dexter nodded gravely, and said, "Since this matter concerns all the living things on the Norland continent, there's no way Lantist could stay out of it. We will definitely do our very best." Mag repeated Dexter's words before explaining, Lantist has never had any interaction with anyone on land. They don't know the common tongue, so I will translate for them. Alright, since this is the case, we will proceed to the location of the seal first. The condition of the seal is very severe now, and we need every race's assistance. Michael nodded, and walked out of the door first. Everyone followed. If such a terrifying devil really existed, then Lantist joining them was a good thing as it gave them one more powerful helper. I sense the evil aura from Josh. There might be a problem with him. Mag heard Irina's transmitted voice. A hint of surprise flashed across Mag's eyes, and he looked at Josh. Given his identity and status and his close contest for the throne with Sean, why should he get in touch with the devil? Irina continued, I will keep an eye on him. If he attempts to tamper with the seal, then we can confirm that he is controlled by the devil. Mag nodded slightly, and increased his alertness. He was afraid none present would be able to escape if the seal was damaged. The negotiation of the peace accord wasn't smooth, and the terrifying devil was like a blow to them. It caught them all off guard. As for Lantist that suddenly appeared from nowhere, nobody knew what role they would play on the Norland continent now, but their appearance had disrupted all the race's plans. Josh made Vanessa stand beyond the spell formation, and said to her, Vanessa, wait for us here. Vanessa flicked a glance at all the representatives in the spell formation, and worriedly asked, I don't have to go. Josh nodded, and replied, there may be unknown dangers, and I may not be able to protect you. You'd better wait for our return in the restaurant. All right. Vanessa nodded before concernedly said to Josh, then you've got to take good care of yourself, brother Josh. I will wait for you to return. Sure. Josh nodded with a smile before stepping into the spell formation. All the representatives had stepped into the spell formation. After Michael nodded slightly to the formation master at the side, the latter activated the spell formation. A faint golden light lit up the runes on the ground, and everyone disappeared on the spot, and appeared in the underground cave instantly. What is this? After the golden light faded, a giant wall mural appeared in front of them. The terrifying scenes on the mural gave all the representatives a shock. The huge and terrifying indescribable object in the center of the mural and all the various races that had descended into madness reminded them about the horrifying Urba tribe's tragedy that Rex described earlier. Fear engulfed everyone present. That bone-chilling coldness was indescribable. What could make elves eat their own people? What could make a pair of giant dragon father and son kill each other? What made them descend into madness? The answer was perhaps that scary-looking indescribable thing. Its huge body and tentacles were covered with eyeballs. Even the demons were terrified. Master! Are you still all right? Connie grabbed Rex's sleeve, a little frightened. She only discovered that Rex looked a little pale and cold sweat beaded on his forehead when she looked up. I'm all right. Rex shook his head. He shifted his gaze away from the mural, and said with lingering fear, I saw this thing's image in the sky above the Urba tribe then. All the representatives looked even gloomier. Perhaps the devil in this seal was the culprit of the Urba tribe's tragedy, then? Josh looked at that mural with a worried and confused expression. Your Highness, we have to report this matter to the king as soon as possible, Richard said to Josh with voice transmission. There was a tinge of fear in his voice. Josh didn't pay any attention to him. He only stared at that gigantic indescribable thing. Find a chance, release him. You will then gain an unparalleled friend. Everyone here will die, and the Norland continent will be ours completely. We will dominate everything, a seductive voice kept sounding in his ears. However, he was hesitating. After seeing that mural, his staunch conviction was still shaken. This seems to be different from what we agreed upon. Josh tried to speak as calmly as possible inwardly. You have to pay some price if you want to gain power and strength. They are just fellows who will be used as offerings. Death is their best ending. Meanwhile, you are our chosen one. You will become our spokesperson, and you can do as you please. Do you want to kill that man? As long as you release it, he could kill him easily. And that elf? What a cute little beauty. As long as you are willing, she will be yours. Josh looked up at Alex and Irina, and clenched his fists with a complex expression. He didn't reply to that voice again. Michael stood in front of the mural, and solemnly said to everyone, "Ladies and gentlemen, behind this mural is the seal. Although the devil is still sealed in the formation, it could still attack people beyond the formation with spiritual power. Therefore, everyone, do not get close to the seal's spell formation after entering the cave. Do not stare at its eyes, and do not even try to enter the spell formation to attack it." All the representatives nodded in acknowledgement. After experiencing all that and seeing this mural, everyone had put away their contempt. They all became very vigilant, afraid that they might be attacked by the devil if they were careless. Michael then turned around to activate the switch on the stone door. Everyone was staring at the stone door that was slowly opening to the side nervously. A cold and eerie presence gushed out crazily from the opened door's gap. The magic casters took out their magic casters' staffs, and began to chant silently. The dwarves suddenly got shields out of nowhere, and the goblins instinctively stood behind them. Dracula had already unleashed his wings, and he stood half a step in front of Camilla, shielding her behind him. Richard and a knight protected Josh on both sides as they watched the stone door that was slowly opening with vigilant expressions. The immense psychological pressure made all the representatives take out their best defensive skills. Although Michael had repeatedly emphasized that the devil was still sealed, he also told them that it could still attack them even if it was still within the seal. "Quick! I've been waiting for ages. Double ace. Pass. Joker bomb. I am a peasant. We're all peasants. You use the Joker bomb to bomb me right at the start. I never keep a trump card whenever I do things. Moreover, I don't know how to farm. All right, all right. You are the big boss." The stone gradually opened, and what everyone saw wasn't that indescribable thing, but Krasu, Urian, and Babla, who were playing peasants vs landlords next to the bonfire. When the stone door was fully opened, the nervous-looking representatives outside and the three people sitting on the ground and holding playing cards inside were looking at each other. The atmosphere was a little special. Mag's mouth twitched. He forced himself to suppress his laughter. Babla only managed to regain her senses after a while, and said, "Pass. Pass." Krasu followed. 4 twos. Urian continued to toss out his cards calmly. The scene that the representatives saw after the door opened was different from what they had imagined. They even felt ridiculous and laughable watching Krasu and Urian sitting on the ground, and playing cards with a little girl. Even that bone-chilling terrifying atmosphere was taken down a few notches at this moment. Ah! However, an ear-piercing scream still reverberated throughout the cave at the very next moment. Everyone felt they were being stared at as soon as they stepped over the stone door. That intensive fear made their heads tingle. That scary aura that rushed all over them made them feel as if they were confronting the ancient ferocious beast face to face. Dexter and all the Lantistine powerhouses were also looking at that indescribable thing with a fearful expression. There really was an even more terrifying existence above the 10th tier. This was without a doubt very impactful to the Lantistines who had been living in the deep sea for a long time. That indescribable thing also seemed to be antagonized by the group of people who suddenly appeared. It let out a low, piercing roar, and countless tentacles rushed toward the cave's entrance. This scene terrified the representatives. They all retreated instinctively, and took out their defensive means at the same time. They were afraid that they would be killed by that monster instantly. Only the three people playing peasants vs landlord at the side were still calm. "You're really very bad at playing this." Krasu chuckled at Urian while he played his cards after him. "This is so boring." Urian put all his cards onto the table, and the poker cards and little square table turned into dust together. "Now, you're raging because of your incapability." Krasu kept his winnings happily. Babla also threw away her cards, and angrily said, "I'm not going to be the peasant anymore." The representatives were marveling at their recklessness, and felt like laughing at the same time. How calm and collected they must be to be able to play cards around the bonfire. Bam! Countless tentacles clashed with that light golden seal, making the already fragile seal look even worse. That barrier was almost turned transparent. But fortunately, the seal was still able to withstand the indescribable thing's attack. With the sound of corrosion, this attack ended with the hundreds of tentacles being melted away. The representatives, who almost backed out of the cave, finally halted their steps. They looked at the glimmering barrier with lingering fear. If this barrier hadn't withstood this attack, the results would have been unthinkable. Its tentacles are repairing themselves rapidly. Elliot exclaimed. Everyone looked over. The tentacles of that indescribable thing were recovering rapidly in front of their eyes. Within the time of a few short breaths, the amputated limbs were all regrown, and looked exactly the same as before. This terrifying regenerative ability. All the representatives looked very grave. This proved that Alex's earlier words were indeed true. This octopus monster had a regenerative ability that was demoralizing. It's so powerful. Josh, too, was looking at this scene with shock in his eyes. The oppression brought upon by this indescribable thing's aura was way beyond the oppression brought upon by the 10th tier powerhouses. It was an existence of an entirely different level. People could only look up upon and fear it. Its terrifying regenerative ability made it almost invincible. Even when it was trapped within the seal, it was still looking down at all of them arrogantly with its huge body and countless tentacles. There really is such a monster in this world. Franklin, the Tyranno dragon, had an ugly expression too. Even though he had already found out some information from Lewis and Douglas, he was only certain that this fellow was very difficult to deal with after seeing this indescribable thing for himself. Crassus stood up, patted his butt, and sneered at all the representatives retreating to the entrance. Look at all your cowardly looks. If this fellow is able to escape now, how can we still play peasants vs landlord here? All the representatives had an awkward expression. However, it wasn't just one or two of them who were frightened, so it wasn't very embarrassing. It could only be considered as overreacting. This seal can only last for another 3 days. If we're not able to decipher all the runes on the spell formation within 3 days and repair and reinforce the spell formation effectively, it's going to burst through the seal. Novan, who had been working at the side of the spell formation, came over, and solemnly said to all the representatives standing at the cave's entrance, "If any one of your races has people well versed in ancient spell formations and runes, ask them to come to Chaos City right now. Perhaps we might still have a little chance." 3 days. All of them looked sullen at the same time. With this devil's terrifying potential, it would definitely cause a scary catastrophe on the Norland continent once it got out of the spell formation. Just like what the wall mural described, no race could escape from it. Oster stood out, and confidently said, "Although this fellow looks very formidable, it has been sealed for so long. Its power must have deteriorated. There are over 20 10th tier powerhouses here right now. If we combine forces and attack it together, we can definitely kill it." Everyone looked at each other, at a loss for words. Josh stepped forward, and said in a low voice, "I think what Chief Oster said makes sense. This devil concerns the safety of all the races on the Norland continent. Rather than pin our hopes on this spell formation that is going to collapse at any time, why don't we combine forces, kill it, and completely remove this threat in front of us?" While all of them were surprised at Josh supporting Oster, they were also seriously considering the feasibility of their words. The power of the 20-odd 10th tier powerhouses' combined attack was self-evident, but nobody was 100% sure that it could really kill that devil. "I think it is feasible. It's just a monster that has lived a little longer. Since it could be sealed, it proves that its power is still limited. It will be best if our combined attack can kill it. If we can't, we can also weaken it, and allow the spell formation to last a little longer. Franklin stepped forward with a black and thick mace in his hands. He slapped his chest hard, and asked, "Anyone here dares to join me to fight this fellow?" Me. Oster stepped forward. "The Roth Empire is willing to contribute." Josh stepped forward. Richard was about to speak, but he eventually said nothing. He and that knight stood forward, and protected Josh on each side. "The elven race is also willing to help," Elliot quickly chimed in. Soon, all the representatives said they were willing to fight with that devil together with Franklin. Krasser rolled his eyes, and said, "You guys are really so wise. If it could be killed, then wasn't the person who tried so hard to cut it in half and sealed it in the past an idiot?" "That isn't certain." Franklin didn't argue any further. He dashed toward that spell formation with his mace. A heavy armor transformed from black scales soon covered his entire body, and he transformed into a black tornado, and dashed into the seal spell formation. Krasoa protected Babla as they stepped to the side so that she wouldn't be injured by accident. Urian crossed his arms and stood to the side. He had no inclination to help. Dexter looked at Mag. The latter shook his head. He, too, stood where he was without making a move. His gaze was focused on Josh. "Master, Rex had already pulled Connie out of the cave's vicinity as soon as she spoke. He stood in front of her, and ordered, 'Don't look, don't listen.'" Lewis and Douglas glanced at each other before tossing 2 magic spells symbolically. Smash! Franklin, who was leading the charge, smashed his mace into a tentacle. The gooey, serous fluid and chopped meat flew everywhere. That tentacle was almost severed by his mace. However, at the very next second, 3 tentacles smashed into his chest hard. The dragon scale armor was shattered instantly, and the black tornado was dispersed too. The thick mace was sent flying. Franklin spat out a mouthful of blood with fear in his eyes. There were still a few tentacles that were spiraling towards his body that was flying backwards. Right at that moment, Oster rushed forward with a big black saber, and dashed into the cluster of tentacles like a black tornado. Dozens of magic spells and secret skills landed on that octopus monster too. Dazzling lights exploded and landed on that octopus monster. However, as if they were dumped into a swamp, the attacks from the 20-odd 10th tier powerhouses didn't cause any ripples. What a terrifying defensive power! Everyone was shocked. This super defensive capacity that was completely unharmed after undertaking so many 10th tier powerhouses was already beyond their imagination. However, the fight had already started, and Franklin and Oster were still in the spell formation. There was no way they could stop now. Right at that moment, Josh pointed the magic wand that he had been waving for a long time at the spell formation. An inconspicuous exploding fireball flew towards the spell formation amongst all the dazzling attacks. However, it wasn't flying towards that octopus monster. Instead, it was flying towards that spell formation on the ground. There indeed is a problem with him. The eyes of Irina, who had been paying attention to Josh, lit up. She raised her hand, and a light shield appeared in front of that exploding fireball. That fireball exploded, and a ripple appeared on that light shield, but the base of the spell formation wasn't harmed. Irina. Joey looked at the light shield that suddenly appeared with shock. He instinctively looked at Irina. Irina looked at him coldly. Those pure blue eyes seemed to be able to see through the filth and darkness at the bottom of his heart. Perhaps she has seen through it. Josh's heart was racing. He tried his best to remain calm, but his hand that held the magic wand couldn't help but tremble. What's that for? They already have the upper hand. Why can't they wait patiently for a while longer? Mag looked at Josh and pursed his lips perplexedly. His actions had basically proved that he had already made a deal with the devil. He might not have sold his soul yet, but this was already enough. At the same time, Franklin and Oster, who had entered into the spell formation, were trapped in a dire condition. Numerous tentacles spiraled towards them, and they could no longer get out by themselves. Our attacks cannot break through its defense. Get them out of there! Michael yelled loudly as he watched the two people in danger within the seal. A dazzling holy light pierced into the seal, and that octopus monster let out a shrill roar. At the same time, Douglas and Urian activated the ice seal domain and frost domain together. The tentacles that were squirming crazily slowed down, but the frost rapidly disappeared too. Dexter raised his crystal ball up, and chanted an ancient and mysterious spell. A monstrous wave crashed down hard, and blocked the tentacles behind the two of them. A gap that they could move was open again. Let's go! Franklin roared angrily before turning around, and ran to get out of the seal. Just as he was about to dash out of the seal, a tentacle that got out of the frost's restraint slammed into his back hard, and sent him flying and crashing into the stone wall. As for Oster, who was surrounded by the tentacles, he wasn't that lucky. Before he could dash to the spell formation's periphery, his left hand was entangled by a tentacle, which twirled up his arm like a snake quickly. Oh no! Everyone was shocked to see that. If he was dragged away by the octopus monster, the consequences would be disastrous. Oster was also a tough guy. Since he knew he couldn't get away from that tentacle, and other tentacles were rushing towards him, he gritted his teeth and swung his axe at himself. He chopped off his left arm that was entangled by the tentacle, and pounced out of the spell formation. Novan raised his hand and tugged him out in mid-air. The fresh blood that was gushing out formed a parabola. He barely got away from the tentacle that almost grabbed his foot. In the spell formation, that octopus monster raised Oster's severed arm with a tentacle, and waved it arrogantly before tossing it into that big mouth which was filled with rows of sharp teeth. My arm! Oster was supported by people as he pressed on his severed arm and let out a screech. This is a monster. A terrifying monster. Franklin crawled out of the rubble himself. He stared at the octopus monster in the seal spell formation with fear as he coughed out blood. All the representatives had similar expressions. They all witnessed Franklin, who was known for his destructive force, fail to cut off one tentacle with all his might, and almost get slammed to death by one tentacle. How were they going to fight against it? That fellow had thousands of tentacles. They had an emotional breakdown. The octopus monster slammed against the spell formation to vent its frustration. All the representatives were fearful when they looked at that flashing seal barrier. At this moment, they finally realized what this thin-looking seal spell formation meant. Michael secretly heaved a breath of relief. Looking at the expressions of all the representatives, the intimidation effect had been achieved. Hence, he said, everyone, you have seen the devil with your own eyes, and witnessed its power yourselves. This matter concerns the future and safety of the Norland continent. We need all the races to work together in order to achieve the final victory. Now, let's return to the restaurant first. The representatives didn't object. The atmosphere here was oppressive and scary. Every second they spent here was stressful, and they couldn't wait to leave. Wait a minute. There's no rush to leave first. Irina stepped out, and sneered at Josh. We have a traitor from the devil's camp among us. I don't want to be stabbed in the back while I'm fighting if we don't catch him and deal with him first. Traitor. All the representatives looked at Irina with shock and doubt, and instinctively stepped away from the people around them. Irina, you can't be talking about me, right? Josh looked at Irina with shock. He didn't look panicked. Instead, his expression had a hint of innocence and absurdity. Anyone could tell that Irina was picking on Josh. The various representatives looked at Josh and Irina in shock and disbelief. Their feud was nothing strange in the Norland continent. There had been rumors previously that the Roth Empire's king and Elven queen had discussed marriage between the two races. Josh and Irina could very well have had a political marriage. It was said that Irina left the Wind Forest for the first time to roam the continent because of this incident. That was how the series of legends came about, including the stories she left behind with Alex. No one knew what Josh was thinking. However, around 3 years ago, Alex was ambushed in Rodu, and disappeared without a trace from then on. Rumor had it that he died on that rainy night. Back then, Irina went into seclusion, and there was no longer a single word of this couple. The Roth Empire blamed this incident on their enemies, but everyone knew very well that was not the case. Besides, some of the people present took part in the assassination that rainy night. Weston retreated to a corner and sized Josh, Irina, and Alex up cautiously. Very few people knew that Alex and Irina had a daughter who disappeared together with Alex. No one knew whether she was dead or alive. It was apparent that Irina already knew that the feud between Josh and Alex would not end until one of them died. Therefore, Weston was uncertain if Irina wanted to use the devil to take revenge on Josh, or if she really discovered something. Everyone had the same thoughts, so while being cautious, they were not eager to make a stand. "Irina, don't you dare malign the second prince!" Richard shouted. He stood beside Josh to protect him, and stared at Irina cautiously. The knights at the side also pulled out their swords, and stood beside Josh to protect him, looking very nervous. "Perhaps there's some misunderstanding between us. This is my first time here today and seeing this devil. How can I be a traitor?" Josh did not avert his gaze or try to conceal anything. Instead, he looked at Irina in shock. "Perhaps you have no idea that the first person I interacted with, who had exchanged souls with the devil, was Borg. He attempted to use the devil aura to attack the Tree of Life to strengthen himself. However, the devil ultimately controlled his soul. Therefore, I killed him. After that, it was Ferdinand from the Falk tribe. He had also exchanged his soul with the devil, and unleashed the devil within him. He plotted the death of his family, and I used the holy light to dispel the devil aura in him. No one knows the devil better than I do. The holy light would show me the way." Irina raised her magic caster's staff, and the bright holy light started to congregate. "Irina! Stop what you're doing right now. If you attack the second prince for no reason, you and the night elves will have to suffer the wrath of the Roth Empire," Richard howled. He raised his magic wand, and pointed it at Irina at the same time. "Irina, you cannot be rash with this," Michael said. "Things happened too suddenly, and this was not part of their plan. Josh was the second prince of the Roth Empire. Right now, in front of their enemy, what they needed was to work together. If Irina really injured Josh and caused the Roth Empire's wrath and dissatisfaction, it would be making the matter worse. In that case, let me show all of you what he had done." Irina threw out a photo stone. The image of everyone attacking the devil appeared, and the focus was on Josh. Just when everyone was joining forces to attack the octopus monster, Josh released an exploding fireball. The fireball flew over amidst all the magic and spells, but it did not fly towards the octopus monster. Instead, it slanted to the side, and landed at the edge of the spell formation. However, just when the fireball magic was about to land, a light shield appeared on the ground, and absorbed the attack from the fireball. "What?" Everyone's faces changed upon witnessing that scene. After experiencing the prowess of the devil, they had all understood the importance of that seemingly thin layer of seal. However, that exploding fireball from Josh almost destroyed the spell formation, and caused all of them to die here. Everyone looked at Josh with anger. Even Richard and the Roth Empire's knights were in shock. How could this be? Josh did not appear calmer than the rest. Instead, he watched the scene replay in disbelief as he muttered, I cast the attack towards the octopus monster. How did it appear there? This is completely different from what I saw. Stop putting on an act. I found you weird back in the restaurant," Irina said coldly with a frown. "Irina, I know you hate me, and have some misunderstandings about me. I will explain it to you in the future. But right now, I, as the second prince of the Roth Empire, have everything that people could only dream of having. Why would I have to exchange my soul with the devil to end up in Ferdinand's state?" Josh shook his head. He reproachfully said, "I was too careless. Ever since I entered this cave, I felt an inexplicable sense of fear enveloping me. I attacked rashly at first because I wanted to do my best to help. Now that I see this, perhaps the devil had controlled me the moment I entered the cave. I almost caused trouble. I am really too weak, and I am not mentally strong enough. That gave the devil a chance. Thankfully, you've detected the abnormality, and prevented the catastrophe from happening. If the devil was really released by me, I would never be able to seek forgiveness even if I die 10,000 times. Josh looked at Irina gratefully, and took 2 steps forward. He looked at her, and openly said, "If there really is a hint of devil's aura in me, or if I've been possessed by the devil, please use your holy light to dispel it for me. I, Josh, am open and aboveboard. I would rather die than let the devil make use of me." "Your Highness." Richard wanted to go up. "Sir, do not come up." Josh lifted his hand to stop Richard. He seriously said, "This matter concerns the future of the Norland continent. I believe in Irina. If the devil really controlled me without me knowing, I would really become a sinner." Josh's speech was filled with so much sincerity that it left the other representatives deep in thought. Even a top-tier powerhouse like Lewis could be controlled by the devil. It did not seem improbable that Josh, who was a mere 7th tier, could be controlled by the devil to do something like that. On top of that, Josh's statement made everyone admire him. Those who dare to fight for the crown aren't simple indeed. Mag looked at Josh and frowned. If that was the case, why would Josh dare to ask her to use the holy light to cleanse him? Ferdinand had become almost a good-for-nothing after being cleansed by the holy light, and the damage to his body dealt physically and spiritually could not be healed. "I know I'm not good enough and not strong enough. I just hope to maintain my innocence." Josh looked at Irina, and said in a deep and gentle voice, "Come, take it as I'm begging you. Use your holy light to cleanse me." Without preemptive caution, even a 10th tier could be easily controlled by this fellow. Lewis looked at Josh, and nodded slightly as he said, "This is a good child." Maybe he was targeted by the devil. As someone who had experienced it firsthand, he knew very well how scary the devil's powers to spiritually control an individual were. Therefore, he thought that Josh's explanation of being controlled by the devil at that time to cause the exploding fireball to diverge was valid. "That is possible." Krasu nodded. He looked at Josh. He shouldn't be that stupid. The two of them basically represented what the others thought. Josh's openness won everyone over, and some of them even felt that he was a true hero who was willing to sacrifice himself for justice. If you've only been bewitched temporarily by the devil, the holy light would be of very minute harm to you. It would only dispel the devil aura within you. However, if you've exchanged souls with the devil, the holy light would rip the devil's soul out of your soul, and when that happens, you will turn into a dimwit, Irina said coldly as she looked Josh in the eye. "I believe I would not become a dimwit," Josh said with a warm smile as he stood up tall. "Irina, I'm warning you. If you dare to harm His Highness in any other way during the cleansing, I will never let you off." Richard shouted as she stared at Irina. Mag walked out from the corner, and stood beside Irina as he looked at Richard calmly. The two people standing side by side were very eye-catching. Many of them had forgotten how suave these two were when they roamed the continent. The holy light would guide them to where justice was. Today, the two of them stood side by side once again, and they were still as dazzling. Alex did not say anything, but his presence was enough to thrash Richard, who had just warned Irina. No one was faster than Alex within 3 meters, and no one could stop him. Josh's eyelid twitched. He pressed his lips together, and did not speak further. "In front of our enemy, we need to have trust in each other. Since Prince Josh is willing to prove his innocence, let's have Irina use the holy light to cleanse him, and the truth will be out." Michael, as the host, naturally would not let the situation continue growing tense. He calmly said, "At this moment, we have more than 10 10th-tier powerhouses watching to ensure absolute fairness. Please. Josh took a step forward, and stood with his hands behind him. "All right, I'll do as you wish." Irina raised her magic caster's staff, and said in a melodic voice, "Holy light, please listen to my command, light up the darkness and cleanse all evilness." A bright light shot out from the magic caster's staff, and landed on Josh. Traces of black devil aura rose from Josh's head, and were disintegrated by the holy light. However, Josh's expression remained calm. He merely closed his eyes instinctively, and he did not appear to be in pain. After less than 10 seconds, the holy light had no reaction to Josh. There wasn't much devil aura. "I suppose it was from the moment he was controlled," Douglas said. The various representatives nodded. From Josh's expression and the amount of black devil aura, it did seem like what Douglas had said. Josh had not exchanged his soul with the devil. He had merely been controlled by the devil for a short moment. Indeed, His Highness is innocent. He's a victim as well. Richard and the knight smiled. At the same time, they secretly heaved a sigh of relief. How could this be? Irina frowned. However, the holy light did not detect any more devil aura from Josh's body. Although she was bewildered, she had no choice but to retract the holy light. Mag looked intently at Josh. He was not surprised by this result. Since he dared to take the initiative to receive the holy light's cleansing, it meant that he was not afraid of the holy light. After the holy light faded away, Josh opened his eyes with a smile, and looked at Irina as he said, "Irina, thank you. I felt as though I've been through spiritual cleansing. I do not feel clouded anymore. If you had not found out in time and cleansed me, I'm afraid there would only have been greater trouble. No matter what method you use, this will not end like that." Irina kept her magic caster's staff, and turned to walk out of the cave. Mag left a meaningful smile for Josh, and turned to follow Irina. "Why did you smile just now?" Irina asked Mag. "I was just pretending to smile meaningfully. That would often be enough to bring immense pressure to a person." Mag smiled. "Actually, I have no idea why I smiled. I must have made everyone worried," Josh said apologetically to the various representatives. He looked at Mag's back, and felt a little uncomfortable inside. The smile the other party left behind before leaving made him uneasy, as though Alex had seen through it all. It was as if he had just watched a clown's pathetic performance. It was driving Josh crazy. Prince Josh was not controlled by the devil. This matter will end here. Let's return to the restaurant to discuss the plan. After wrapping up the whole episode, Michael led everyone back to the restaurant with the teleportation portal. I haven't showered in days. Can I go back with you?" Babla quickly said. "I have already finished my job. I can't help with the rest of the things." "Of course. You are a hero who has made an outstanding contribution. Follow us back to the restaurant and receive your reward," Michael said with a nod. He knew very clearly what Babla had done to contribute to the repair of the spell formation. "In that case, I want to go to the restaurant for a meal and visit my precious disciple," Krasua said. "You can't visit her alone." Urian followed them out. "If you're all leaving, I'm leaving too. The problem will usually always come when a person is left alone. It's better to leave the spell formation to work on its own." Novan walked over with a bunch of drafts. He had to make a trip back to the school to see if he could find some useful information in the hidden library. The teleportation portal lit up, and the cave was soon empty. Something is definitely wrong with Josh. His issue is different from Ferdinand and Borg's. Irina told Mag, who was putting on his apron, on the second floor of the restaurant. "He is smart." Mag, who had already changed into his chef's suit and apron, looked at Irina with a smile, and said, "But whether he has made a deal with the devil does not stop me from killing him." "Your smile is very interesting." Irina was slightly stunned. After that, she pinched Mag's cheek. "Right now, Mag could not really tell if he was playing the role of Alex or playing the role of Mag. However, judging from current circumstances, his acting was superb. As for why he didn't choose to sit with the rest like a big boss for the meeting, and chose to busy himself in the kitchen, it was all because of the reservation fees. No, passion. Yes. It was the sense of achievement when the big shots from the different races lost control of themselves in front of the delicacies. He could not kill Josh for the time being. If Josh were to die in Chaos City, the racial war might be brought forward. The biggest threat that the Norland continent was facing currently was the uncertainties. The great old ones hidden in unknown places were just like ticking time bombs that could explode at any time. It was the kind of explosion that'd destroy the entire continent. As for Josh, letting him live for a while more was not of any threat to Mag. Since ancient times, the royal family had been the most heartless. If there had been even a single mistake during the assassination on that rainy night, he would not have landed in this plight. Mag had never intended to let any single one of the father and sons off. It was already 10:30 am. Mag looked at Irina, who was looking out of the window thoughtfully, and turned to walk downstairs. It would naturally not be appropriate for Mag to appear in the restaurant straight away. Therefore, he flipped over a wall at the back, and cycled leisurely back to the restaurant. Yabimiya and Rina had already been waiting at the restaurant entrance, on time to prepare for lunch. "Mr. Mag, are you preparing for lunch now?" Dykus asked Mag with a smile. "Yes. I have to do some preparations beforehand." Mag nodded with a smile. Dykus let everyone into the restaurant. This was communicated beforehand. Mag and the rest walked in, and Vanessa, who was reading a gourmet magazine by the window, stood up excitedly and walked over as he looked at Mag expectantly, and asked, "Boss Mag, is the entire menu available for ordering this afternoon? Including beef and mutton kebab?" "Yes." Mag nodded. "That's great. I was reading Randy's column, and it's already making me salivate. I must try the taste of this mutton kebab," Vanessa said happily. Mag glanced at Vanessa's innocent smile. She would probably be the most worry-free foodie representative among all the representatives. However, that was also a good thing, as she should not worry about such things. It was bliss to be able to become a happy foodie. "Amy. Little Amy." The moment Mag stepped into the kitchen, he heard a familiar voice from the door. Krasu had already walked in as he called out with a bright smile. "Little Amy isn't even in the restaurant." Urian followed behind. He swept a glance across the restaurant, and appeared rather disappointed. "So it's the two masters. The city lord's castle has reserved the entire restaurant today, so Amy went to her friends to play," Mag said without waiting for them to ask. "I see." Krasu was a little disappointed. He initially wanted to give little Amy a surprise. "It's definitely not a surprise to suddenly see your teacher appear at your house when you're on a holiday. It's a shock," Babla said softly as she walked in. "I didn't give her holiday assignments." Krasu pressed his lips together. "Boss, my sisters, I'm back." Babla did not reply. Instead, she opened her arms wide, and ran towards Mia. "Babla." Yabimiya looked at Babla, who had not been in touch with them for days, with pleasant surprise. The young lady that was refined and well put together now looked as though she had just crawled out of a mine. Her hair was in a mess, and her clothes were also dirty, giving one a rude shock. Seeing everyone's shocked expression, Babla quickly halted and glanced at her clothes. She embarrassedly said, "I haven't showered for too long. I can't take it anymore." Yabimiya went up and held Babla's hand with a face full of concern as she asked, "Babla, where have you been all this while? If you were kidnapped, blink." "No, I went to do something big." Babla shook her head. She looked at Mag, and said, "Boss, can I borrow the bathroom?" "Go ahead. I'll pass you some clean clothes." Mag nodded with a smile. There was no reason for him to reject Babla on account of her days of hard work deciphering the spells in the underground cave. All right. Babla rushed upstairs happily. After removing her dirty clothes, turning on the tap, and feeling the hot water rain down on her, Babla let out a long, relaxed sigh. It was the perfect way to soothe her tired body. I've placed the clothes outside. Take a bath after your shower. Remember to come down to eat in a while. I'll be preparing some extra kebabs for you. Mag's voice came from outside. Sure. Babla replied happily. She looked at the bathtub that was filling up automatically. This was such lavish treatment. Mag went downstairs again. This time, Michael had led the various representatives back to the restaurant. However, compared to their bright appearance when they left, the various representatives were all in a rather sorry state now. Their faces were full of worries. Oster, who had lost an arm, sat with a long face. His wound was no longer bleeding. However, he was only left with one arm for the rest of his life since his arm had been eaten up by the octopus monster, and he could not grow a new arm. His strength would definitely decrease. Franklin did not appear too well, either. His injury was only slightly better compared to Oster's. His front and back had been badly beaten by the devil, and he did not feel too well. It would take some recuperation before he could recover. Big brother Josh, are you injured? Did you guys get attacked by something? Vanessa could tell the atmosphere was rather strange, so she inquired with Josh, who appeared rather pale, softly. Don't worry. It's just a small injury. Josh smiled at Vanessa, but did not fill her in about what had happened. What happened to them? Yabimiya asked softly in the kitchen. These people were the most formidable group on the Norland continent. Why did they get hurt? Gina shook her head in bewilderment as well. Just do what you're supposed to do, and don't say anything extra, Mag said softly. Yabimiya quickly shut her mouth, and brought out the plates. Everyone has seen the situation. I believe all of you know very well how serious this is. Right now, we urgently need to decipher the remaining spells. The giant dragons and Chaos City's spell formation masters are at their wits' end. Now, we can only see if there are any spell formation masters in the various races who have studied ancient books and can decipher the spells, Michael told the various representatives in a solemn tone. I'm here to save you. Principal Novan, if we're unable to decipher all the scriptures in this spell formation within 3 days, will it escape the spell formation? Must every single scripture be deciphered? Sally asked Novan. The other representatives also looked at Novan with concern. Yes. This spell formation is very complicated. It's made up of millions of scriptures, and if we are unable to decipher any of it, we will not be able to repair and strengthen the spell formation. A single small mistake could disintegrate this spell formation. Novan nodded. In that case, are we just going to wait here? If it's so difficult to decipher such ancient scriptures in such a short time, or there might even be the possibility that the scriptures could not even be deciphered, what should we do? Sally asked. We can't pin all our hopes on the scriptures. Yes. My exact same thoughts. Novan nodded. He looked at the various representatives, and said, for the past few days, other than deciphering the scriptures, the spell formation masters from Chaos City and the giant dragon tribes had been setting up countless spell formations outside the sealed land. However, judging from the powers of this devil, these spell formations will only be effective in hindering it slightly. They will not be able to seal it. The expressions of the various representatives turned grave. Therefore, other than asking the spell formation masters from the various tribes to come down to Chaos City, I think there is more need to call upon all the top-tier powerhouses of the Norland continent to Chaos City to get ready for when the devil breaks through the seal, Novan said in a solemn tone. This battle might be unpreventable, and we have to be prepared for it. The elves are willing to fight for the Norland continent, Sally said with a serious expression as she stood up. Elliot looked at Sally and opened his mouth anxiously. However, there was nothing he could say about it. The dwarf representative also stood up, and said in a solemn voice, "The Eason Castle is able to block off any enemy, but we aren't confident in blocking out this monster. Since we can't avoid it, the dwarves are willing to fight for the Norland continent. Evilness is so detestable. The vampires don't see eye to eye with it. We are willing to stand alongside all of you," Dracula said with a smile after putting his wine glass down. "The giant dragons have already come to a consensus. We will do our best in the fight if this devil really breaks through the seal," Lewis said as he stood up. "The Falk tribe is willing to join in the battle." Connie clenched her fist as she stood up. She had to exact her revenge. "The Og tribe is also going to FCK that piece of SHT," Oster said angrily as he slammed the table. The various representatives all made their stand, supporting the decision to join forces in the battle against the devil. In the end, only the Roth Empire did not make their stand. Everyone turned to look at Josh. "My apologies, I am unable to make the decision for this matter. I will report this to the king immediately, and I believe that His Majesty will not just sit and watch it happen," Josh said apologetically. He was unable to make a decision on behalf of the Roth Empire to be safe. "All right. Since everyone has decided to join forces, other than gathering more spell formation masters to Chaos City, we would also like all the powerhouses from the various races to be prepared to make their way down to Chaos City as the war might start anytime." Michael nodded. He then continued, "In that case, we need to discuss a strategy for the fight against the enemy. We have paid a heavy price in the cave today, but have not actually dealt any substantial harm to the devil. This meant that we were not able to kill it through normal means." The various representatives started discussing how to deal with the devil with a heavy heart. As of now, the holy light technique should be the best way that could restrain and deal harm to the devil. But even if I give it my all, I still cannot wound it lethally. In addition, there are very few magic casters who know the holy light technique, Irina said. "There are 3 magic casters in Magus Tower who know the holy light technique. I will ask them to come with the team. However, they are only at the 6th or 7th tier," Richard said. "There are 2 magic casters from the Elven tribe who know the holy light technique. They can come to support as well," Sally said. "That's far from enough." Irina shook her head. The 2 Elven light-type magic casters were also only at the 6th or 7th tier. The amount of damage they could deal to the devil was limited. The atmosphere went down again. "I've never been so stuck in my life." Franklin pounded his thigh frustratedly. Mag looked at the group of people in the tense situation, and interrupted, "It's lunchtime, do you want to order your food?" Everyone turned to look at Mag and frowned. Doesn't this owner know how to read the situation? Everyone is discussing something that concerns the survival of the Norland continent. Is it time to eat? I want 20 mutton kebabs and an insanely spicy grilled fish, Vanessa said with a raise of her hand. Insanely spicy again. Everyone glanced around. The thought of the insanely spicy hot pot this morning troubled them, but their stomachs were unknowingly craving for it. After thinking it through, it seemed to be meaningless to remain stuck in this situation. It'd be better for them to have some food and fill themselves up so that they had the energy to continue the discussion. Give me a roasted duck. My taste buds are craving for some flavor after staying down there for so many days, Krasua said. A savory tofu pudding, and a braised chicken and rice, Urian ordered. Hot pot again? Lewis asked Jinx. No, Jinx shook his head vigorously. How about that insanely spicy grilled fish? Jinx glanced at Vanessa. No. Jinx glared. He could feel his behind tense up the moment he heard the word insanely. Useless. Lewis pressed his lips together. After that, he said, a large mild spicy grilled fish. My apologies, the spicy grilled fish are all at least medium spicy, Mag said with a smile. Lewis thought about it seriously before nodding, and saying, all right, then a medium spicy grilled fish it is. The various representatives had learned their lesson not to follow Vanessa's orders. This young lady might seem weak, but her preferences were unusually shocking. The others chose the dishes that looked good on the menu as they got ready to try something new. Over here, 10 beggars chicken. Dexter used his awkward common tongue. What? The various representatives all turned to look. All right. Mag nodded with a smile. He was not shocked. After all, this was Lantist's holy chicken. Dexter would naturally choose it now that he had the chance to eat in the restaurant. Just then, a golden glow lit up and a spell formation appeared in the empty space in the middle of all the tables. Babla! I'm here to save you. With the glow came a loud and angry declaration. When Mag saw that teleportation portal, he was stunned for a while. However, his eyes quickly lit up. Babla and Save had revealed too much information. Besides, Babla came to Norland continent through the restaurant's underground ancient teleportation portal. As Babla was the beloved princess of the Moon Nation, the king of the Moon Nation would definitely do something about her sudden disappearance. Babla had been trying to reactivate the teleportation portal for months, but had failed. Now that the ancient teleportation portal had been opened again, the silhouette had already sent several thoughts through Mag's mind. After the golden glow, a group of people appeared sitting on the empty floor. Among them were people holding swords, magic casters' staffs, and heavy shields. All of them were alert and protecting a middle-aged man wearing lavish golden clothes and a jewel-studded crown in the middle. Of the 10 people, 6 were actually 10th-tier powerhouses. Where are they from? The various representatives were stunned by the sudden appearance of this group of people. They had just accepted the existence of Lantist, and now a group of mysterious powerhouses had suddenly appeared. Was there even an end to this? Mag looked at the middle-aged man in the middle with the crown. His features were similar to Babla's, but most importantly, he had the same light pink crescent between his brows, and it was more obvious than Babla's. There's no doubt they were father and daughter. Mag could basically ascertain his conjecture. The people from the Moon Nation were also a little dazed. They had imagined the various situations that they might face at the other side of the teleportation portal, like countless terrifying unknown organisms, or an extremely difficult environment for survival. However, the situation right now was a little different from what they had imagined. They were actually surrounded. There were more than 20 10th-tier powerhouses around them, sitting and staring at them. They were all dressed differently based on their races, but there was no doubt that they had the aura of a powerhouse. It was a hell of a beginning. Protect His Majesty, a great magic caster whose hair had turned all white commanded. He raised his hand, and formed a protective shield around everyone while saying in a low voice, "Restart the teleportation portal, we have to leave this place." Everyone held their weapons tightly. Although they had ended up in grave danger, none of them cowered. They were already prepared to make their glorious sacrifice to protect the safety of their king. Although they had no idea where this terrifying place they had teleported to was, they were outnumbered, and would be disadvantaged in the fight. The most important thing was to ensure the king's safety. Hold on. Kenneth waved his hand, and stopped the formation master from reactivating the spell formation. He said in a low tone, "I'm not going back before finding the princess." That great magic caster started persuading the man. "Your Majesty, this is an extremely dangerous place, please." "Enough said," Kenneth interrupted. He glanced around to observe the area. This place appeared to be a discussion room. These powerhouses should be in a meeting, and not here to attack them. Otherwise, their weapons should be in their hands, and not by their side. On top of that, there was a mixture of races, including elves, forest trolls, dwarves, goblins, and demons from the ancient books. It did not appear that they were on the same side. The various representatives were stunned for a moment, but upon seeing the people who came in preparation to fight, they all picked up their weapons ready for the battle. Everyone was already troubled by the devil, so they were naturally on guard when they saw the sudden appearance of these fellows. Suddenly, the atmosphere in the restaurant grew tense. Could they? Krasil looked at them, but his eyes lit up as he looked at Urian beside him. The same aura. Urian nodded. His icy face also lit up. Who are you? Michael asked in a deep voice. He had no idea who these powerhouses were. Where is this place? Who are all of you? If you've abducted my daughter, release her now. If she's fine, I shall not hold it against you, Kenneth said in an equally cold tone. Daughter. The various representatives frowned. Where is Babla right now? Why haven't I seen her? She isn't their match. Kenneth was starting to panic upon getting no replies. Apologies, may I interrupt, Mag said as he went up. Hey! The others looked at Mag. This restaurant owner seemed a little clueless. He even dared to walk towards this group of mysterious powerhouses. Do you know where my daughter is? Kenneth stared daggers at Mag. If my guess isn't wrong, your daughter should be called Bablat. Mag said with a smile as he looked at Kenneth fearlessly. How did you know that? Kenneth's face fell. What did you do to her? What do you mean by what I did to her? What kind of person do you think I am? I have been bringing your daughter up well. Mag rolled his eyes, and smilingly said, your daughter is great, beast. Kenneth exploded. The pink crescent on his forehead lit up, and pink armor appeared on him as he looked ready to fight it out with Mag. Hey! Mag raised his brow. This king of the Moon Nation wasn't behaving like what he expected. Mag was kind enough to take his daughter in, and what was the king trying to do now? Hat! Irina laughed softly. She raised her magic caster's staff, preparing to make a light shield over Mag father. Just then, a surprised voice came from the stairwell. Bablat! Kenneth paused. He turned back, and saw the figure he had been pining for on standing at the staircase as joy radiated from his eyes. It's me! Bablat rushed over like the wind, and pounced into Kenneth's embrace. Kenneth hugged Bablat tightly as he said with joy and guilt, my child. I am late, your highness. Everyone else from the Moon Nation was also elated, but they still did not let their guard down. They are father and daughter. The various representatives were surprised at such a sight, but they had let their guard down. Tell me, did he bully you? Kenneth still had his gaze locked on Mag, though with less caution, and more interrogatively.